All right, welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. This is another episode. This is episode 53. We made it past the year mark, and today we're going to be talking about, in honor of tomorrow, Labor Day, work type games. Games where you're, like, working. This was your idea, David.
Yeah, well, working is play in some games, but why? But
Yeah.
why?
And playing can sometimes be work, which we'll also talk about.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Fine. It's a strange little line, and games kind of jump from one side to the other.
This one's going to be awesome because it's got real science in it.
Real science, yeah, as opposed to our other episodes, which is mostly conjecture and false science.
Right. I try to give as much pseudoscience as I can, but this one, I'm not going to be able to squeeze it in. So.
Yeah, well, I might be able to find some place to talk about essential oils and how they help your gaming reflexes.
Essential oils, man. Jeez, I had someone else on Facebook invite me to one of those. It was called, it was something really cheesy, like Renoil Your Life or something like that. It was really ridiculous. I was like, that's not
Like,
even
not even a
clever.
good pun. Not even a good pun, and puns are the easiest kind of humor.
What is going on?
With what?
Um, yep. But, at any rate.
I think I'm speaking for all the listeners when I want to know what's going on right now.
Yeah, I had to go pause I guess, this new Google Hangouts thing, which is what we use to record because we're weird, I guess, or I'm weird.
Mm.
And, yeah, it's now you, like, create an event, like a Hangout event, and then you invite people to view it, and then you invite people to take part in it. Anyway, it opens up its own page, and it just decided to play on me, which is weird. Totally distracted me.
Oh, that's all right. So, yeah. What else is going on this week?
Well, actually, I just got an email yesterday that my computer came in. It got shipped. Why did I get an email?
You're like, that
There's a
explains
computer
the
at your
back
front
end
door.
on my front door.
Thanks for that email. And also, how did you know? But yeah, so that's good. They fixed it, hopefully, fingers crossed, and they downgraded my processor because the upgraded one explodes and shoots fire, and now we're good to go. So that's
Good.
great.
Excellent. So, you should be able to play The Walking Dead Season 2 again.
Yes,
soon.
I'm really looking forward to playing that. Also, I'm looking forward to playing Burial at Sea, the new, not new, but the BioShock expansion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that, and of course more Divinity Original Sin, which I'll talk about. Actually, let's talk about that in the game experiences section because I found something out that I think helps explain its massive ratings.
Okay, good.
So yeah. Oh, one more thing. I'm a Mr. Big Important Smart Guy. Apparently, according to the notes.
Yeah, show notes.
Looking at the show notes, and it says new podcast cameo for Mr. Big Important Smart Guy.
That's you.
So-
That's your title.
Yeah, I need to get that on the door, right underneath the at my office at the clinic. It has a Sith symbol on it, which is amazing. That way people know what they're getting into when they come for assessment. So next, I'm gonna put right below that Mr. Big Important Smart Guy. That'll go over well.
Then they'll know.
Then they'll know that I was on another podcast. That other podcast was called Logicast. Logicast is by kind of a friend. We alluded to it last episode, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think we did. But kind of a friend, or quasi-internet friend. Jared Smith is his name, and he started up a podcast with his friend Darby Macy, I think. And yeah, they do like a blog talk radio, which I guess is like a new thing, like quasi-new, which is like radio on the internet. It's like a podcast, but it's like you're supposed to listen to it live. Is that right?
Yeah, Blog Talk Radio. And it usually comes out in podcast form too, but it's designed for live listening.
Yeah. You can like call in and all that. So I don't know. That's pretty cool. But I never expect anyone, or I don't know, during like the main business days and stuff. I don't expect anyone to find time to tune in. And if they did, then like I don't even know if we could do it steadily on those days because their schedules are pretty weird.
Indeed.
But anyway, it was good. We talked about religious fanaticism, which we actually got sidetracked for a while and started talking about the Catalyst model and some other stuff. But yeah, like he was kind of. They both give their thoughts on like how that happens, like how people become kind of fanatic with something, like dangerously fanatic.
Like to the point of willing to die for your cause.
Yeah, like those folks in I believe it was Jamestown who drank the Kool-Aid literally and died, and then also like suicide bombers and that kind of thing. Like what happens there? And then one of the key questions that apparently a lot of people talk about is whether it's psychopathology or not. Like, is it an actual mental disorder, or is it more,
Or will
or is it?
a healthy brain succumb to that given the right cultural and environmental cues?
There you go. Yeah, and actually, there's no consensus really. I even talked to a couple of my faculty members about this a couple days afterwards, and yeah, they were divided as well. So apparently, there's no right answer, but yeah, I definitely gave my thoughts. So yeah, go check it out if you want. It is available now in MP3 form, I think, or some kind of form on Blog Talk Radio, I believe. Just Google Logicast and then look up probably the title. I think was Conversation with Jeremiah Bean about religious fanaticism or something. Just Google that, you'll find it.
Yeah, Google's good for that.
And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the introduction. Anything else amazing happen in your life?
No, except 3-day weekend, Labor Day, always fun.
Yes. What are you
Finished.
doing?
Oh, well, not much. Just finished watching X-Men and Wolverine on the Netflix, and big fan actually. It blends. It's one season long, but it blends all the best storylines from the X-Men animated series and like the comic books and stuff. So there's a little Days of Future Past in there. There's a little Dark Phoenix in there. There's some Wolverine. Where did I come from though? Yeah, but where did I come from? And then there's some Nightcrawler and Gambit like filler episodes. Overall, I thought it was really good. Kind of summation of the X-Men experience, taking out a lot of the lame parts and just putting it all into a really cool story.
There seems to be a lot of people who can't seem to get Gambit or Nightcrawler right, and then there's other people that have. How did that fall on this episode?
Oh yeah, Nightcrawler. So usually you'll watch someone do like a Nightcrawler, and you're like, why don't you just teleport right there and
Yeah.
right there, teleport there, just teleport all the time. Nightcrawler in this one, he teleports all the time. Like he'll get thrown, and before he hits the wall, he teleports, and then comes up behind the guy with his feet out. So like the momentum of the throw will kick the guy that threw him.
Awesome.
Stuff like that, like stuff where you're like, yes, that's exactly how you should teleport. That's exactly what you should be doing. And Gambit too, like he's a loner. He's part of the Thieves Guild. He's not in the X-Men. He sometimes goes up against them. Sometimes they hire him for jobs, but he's a procurer of hard to steal items.
Okay, so putting your faith in him is kind of a Gambit.
Right. Yeah, and he's always working some angle. So they really played him out the way he should be. Like he's seducing Polaris, Magneto's daughter, trying to get inside information on Geonosia so he can steal some stuff. Like he's Gambit. He's the way Gambit should be.
Right. Yeah. I see. I like that. I like that. When people do Gambit right, he's my favorite X-Man. So that's obviously I named my little corgi Gambit because I love it so much. But yeah. Well, cool. Very good. I haven't been watching a whole lot of things. I guess I'm still doing the Buffy thing, trying to get through that.
Did you end up doing the Buffy and Angel at the same time? Continuous viewing?
No. Amy's doing that actually, but no, not me. I've been wrapped up in a whole different thing. A game. I was probably going to talk about that as well. XCOM.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the expansion. Tim bought me like this little like decking your guys out. You can give them like kind of real cool high tech gear. So anyway, I'll talk about what got me back into that and what's sucking me in the gaming experiences section. But first, let's move on to recent news. All right, recent news. This is the recent news section. We talk about things that are going on in the gaming industry that are noteworthy. So, what do you got, David?
Well, first of all, this headline caught my attention. Guardians of the Galaxy now the highest grossing movie of 2014.
Yes, good.
So, we were kind of sad that Ninja Turtles had kind of taken the pole position at box offices from Guardians, but that was short-lived, and Guardians reclaimed its domination. It's pulled in about $3.8 million worldwide and broken every expectation.
Wow.
So it beat the Lego Movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now it's the highest grossing movie of the year.
Wow. Unlike just almost a throwaway franchise.
Yeah. Well, there's some things we can learn from that. Like, first of all, make your superhero movies fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about Guardians of the Galaxy, if you look at the demographics, a lot of males aged 17 to 34 went, and surprisingly high proportion of them actually. But what was even more surprising was that the audience was 44% female, which is the highest proportion gender-wise of any Marvel movie ever.
Whoa, that's a strange ginger statistic. It's almost like you are paying attention to gender stuff. Weird.
Yeah, it is kind of weird for ominous foreshadowing. But yeah,
Yeah.
apparently, both young men and women both enjoy the same thing, which is fully realized characters and a fun story.
Yeah, that was great. God, what a good movie. I read something else about it recently. Actually, you linked it to me about like uh, kind of psychology and
Yeah,
that movie. Very good.
yeah, and also this is kind of again just a testament to Marvel as a brand. Like it's kind of becoming the Pixar movie studio where you'll just go see it because it's a Pixar movie,
Oh
and
yeah.
people will just go see Marvel movies now. They're like, oh, I don't know, it's a talking tree and a raccoon. Well, it's Marvel. Let's go check it out.
Oh my gosh, I remember seeing like or hearing about it coming out, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, Raccoon's going to be in there," and I was like, "Oh nope, it's going to be awful, stupid." I mean, he's kind of funny in the comics occasionally, but really, I found him as just almost obnoxious, you know. And then I also was thinking, how would you possibly do a believable, lovable raccoon on the big screen? No way. But wow, did they ever pull it off? That guy was awesome.
Yeah.
So way to go. Yeah, definitely. I went and saw it, and I think like you were saying, now it's just the brand. It's the brand loyalty, you know,
Hmm.
secondary reinforcer.
And it's exciting because I have a theory that the more popular something gets, the worse it is in general in pop culture.
Hmm.
I guess it's not a theory; it's just a trend I notice a lot. And so when Ninja Turtles overtook Guardians, I was like, no, it's more confirmation of this cynical worldview. And then now I feel like, yay, maybe there's hope for the world. Maybe something can get a 92% critic approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and yet still succeed on a commercial level.
Yeah, that is crazy. Now they're gonna have to make a second one. So
Yeah,
good. I love Chris Pratt, you know, the main actor on there. So
yeah,
that's
he's
perfect.
great in Parks and Rec.
That guy came out of nowhere. He was selling. You know, remember how you used to like after your post Mormon days, you or not post Mormon days, post your mission.
Mission? Yeah,
Yeah, like a lot of times those kind of some door to door folks kind of prey on you guys, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So what did you end up doing for a while?
Got recruited by an old mission buddy into selling pest control door to door in Kansas City,
Man, you
Missouri.
hated your life.
I hated my life.
You
I,
used to
I
call
lasted
me.
like 2 months and I was done.
Yeah, you used to call me and you're like, I'm supposed to be going door to door, but it's crap, dude. It's hot and stupid and everyone hates me. And that's
Yeah,
funny.
I
But
eventually
yeah,
just started going to the library during my days where I was supposed to be selling and just reading comic books.
awesome.
I was like air conditioning and Batman the Killing Joke. Yes, this is a better use of my time.
That was a good comic. Yeah, but that's what Chris Pratt did. He was selling door to door, like I think it was insurance or something, or I can't remember what it was, but it was some kind of door to door thing. So he had to learn to be kind of lovable and quick off the, off the cuff kind of thing, and so it played to his natural strengths. Well, apparently that translated over to a career in acting, basically. So he got real big on the. He was in something small, I believe, but then he got real big on Parks and Rec. And
Yeah.
now
He
this.
did you see he stole his Star-Lord jacket from the set?
Yes, and he went to
Yeah.
a children's hospital.
Yeah, and dressed up as Star-Lord for to help kids with cancer.
That's
He's just a nice
awesome.
guy.
Yeah, that guy is effing awesome. And when people interview him and stuff, he's just like, I can't believe, like everybody thinks about this when they're kids, you know, and like he's just like, I can't believe it happened to me, and so now I just feel almost guilty, like I need to pay something back because why me, you know? And that
Mhm.
was some interview I saw him in. I was like, yes, good. Geez, stop internal attribution error where people are like, I'm so awesome, that's why it happened to me, and I'm like, no, it's a series of coincidences.
Yeah, it's great, and I knew right from the beginning of that movie when it was like playing some song from the 80s or 70s, and he was dancing around through an Indiana Jones like ruin, punching
Yeah.
rats in the face. Like I was like, this is gonna be a fun movie. I can tell.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I saw the complexity there too. You know, first of all, he's got an old tape cassette, and I was like, that's weird. So that shows that he's got some kind of like anchor to the past, or at least
Mm,
he's got, or at least maybe he's one of those guys who kind of like collects '50s cars. He's
mm,
just he's a romanticizing the past for some reason, and I was like, huh, that's weird. And then I also noted like in the very first couple like scenes or a couple like little parts, I was commenting to Amy about this, and I was like, also it shows how strong he is because he wasn't scared at all of those rats. He caught it, and it's sitting there trying to bite him, and he's like just playing with it. So I was
mm.
like, oh, so he's actually pretty powerful. And then it also showed that he's kind of fun-loving and silly, and it set the tone of, or showed the fact that like it's this ominous cave and he's not threatened.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I loved it. I'm
Yeah.
Star Lord.
Great
Who?
movie.
Star Lord. Come on. But anyway, yeah, very good. But there's some big things happening in Nintendo, right? You've been talking to me about Nintendo a lot, like that treehouse from last episode.
Yeah.
What's going on
Um,
with them?
okay, so Nintendo, when you think about the big three, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, like what is Nintendo? What niche do you think of for them?
I always think like cutesy party games, and handheld things.
Yes. And that's kind of where they went with the Wii and the DS. They were kind of going to try and remember their big brilliant thing with the Wii. The reason it sold so well is because they expand the market to non-gamers,
Yeah.
and like people would buy it for Wii bowling or Wii Sports. And but recently, Miyamoto, the godfather of Nintendo, basically the big man,
Yeah.
he had an interview with Edge magazine, and he says he's talking about how his team now doesn't want to focus on making content for people who passively enjoy games.
Hmm.
And so what he means by that is he says these are the sort of people who, for example, might want to watch a movie, they might want to go to Disneyland. Their attitude is, okay, I'm the customer, you're supposed to entertain me. It's kind of a passive attitude they're taking, and to me it's kind of a pathetic thing. They do not know how interesting it is if you move one step further and try to challenge yourself with more advanced games, for example. So
Wow.
it's kind of almost a public intention to shift away from casual customers, which is a big move away from the Wii strategy. And so what he means is, he says that in the days of the DS and the Wii, Nintendo tried its best to expand the game population. Fortunately, because of the spread of smart devices, people take games for granted now. It's a good thing for us because we do not have to worry about making games something that are relevant to general people's daily lives, which I think kind of shows a lot about his philosophy with gaming. Like he almost saw the Wii days as like it was Nintendo's responsibility to make gaming ubiquitous. Everyone needs to be a gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And now he sees iPads and cell phones doing that, so he's like, okay, we don't have that responsibility anymore. Now we can focus in on other things. And
Hmm.
so, they're moving on to focusing on just, fun Nintendo games for their core fans and not worrying so much about recruiting the casual gamer market anymore.
Gotcha. Well, that's gonna be weird. I wonder how they're gonna do that. Like, I know Zombie U wasn't very much like a casual game, but I'm kind of excited to see what they got. I mean, well, I guess in a way, Smash Brothers has evolved that way. Like, it's
Yeah.
still kind of a party game, but I see a lot of people who take it pretty seriously. So.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see more, Mario Kart 8 is still getting updates and expansions and new maps are coming out for it. Smash Brothers, that Dynasty Warriors Zelda game, Hyrule Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see probably more things along those lines where it's just really fun Nintendo games designed for Nintendo fans and less about like recruiting people's grandmothers into gaming.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, you want to focus on expanding the market for a certain amount of time, but then it's important to go back to the folks who used to play Mario, which was incredibly frustrating. Try
Right.
playing that game and not warping, and just find out how much fun you have.
That's the only way to play it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Anyway, well, also, don't they have there's a new 3DS coming out?
Yeah, they just announced a new 3DS coming out. It's looking more and more like a GameCube controller, the way the buttons are set up. They added a C stick,
Hmm.
which is just a little tiny nub above the YXBA buttons, just used to like rotate cameras and stuff in games.
Hmm.
And they've also added two new shoulder buttons.
Okay, so maybe they're thinking about doing something kind of like the Vita as well.
Yeah,
Like the Sony Vita, where you can go and you can play the games off of your PlayStation mobily. So that's pretty fun.
And they've
But
also, it's going to have better battery life, stuff like that. So if
and,
you haven't bought a 3DS yet and you're thinking about getting one, maybe wait. This one's coming out in Japan this year, and we should be seeing it in America in 2015.
yes, particularly if you have a 2DS, you may want to consider upgrading to a 3DS when that does come out because they just put out a big announcement. They said that um, there are going to be some games you won't be able to play on the 2DS that you will be able to play on the 3DS. So they're clearly gearing towards a more like advanced market or higher demand. So
Yeah, and they've
it's going
already
to be
announced
interesting.
a Xenoblade port for the new 3DS. So any fans of that old RPG series will be seeing them coming to the DS and the Wii U soon.
Yeah, yeah. And isn't the Bravely Default? Aren't they doing something with that too?
Yeah, Bravely Second is coming out also this winter in Japan, the sequel to Bravely Default. So, Bravely Default was one of the better games of the year, I think, that came out. One of the at least one of the
Yeah.
best RPGs. And you're still playing that, aren't you? How far are you on
Yeah,
Bravely
well, I
Default?
set it down recently because I've been really kind of slammed around work and then also here at the house. We've been kind of rehauling chore systems and stuff like that, and then redistributing the household stuff. So it's been super fun. But yeah, I've kind of reshifted my focus for a minute. But once I get to where I can start bringing it to campus again, that'll be great because I have to put in like a certain amount of hours just kind of sitting in the chair
Yeah.
on campus. So I'll probably throw that in my bag and play that some more. But as of yet, I've been able to kind of pop in and out because I've had obligations like going to, like I said, health fairs and stuff like that. So I plan on that upping here in about a week or two. But yeah. Oh, speaking of like handhelds, get this: BioShock One is
hmm
coming out or came out on the iOS.
Yeah. What? How do you do that on an iOS?
I have no idea. Like these Apple, or not Apple, but these handheld games or devices must be really powerful. I haven't really looked at the specs for like 4 years, so I don't have no idea. But geez, it's 14.99, I guess, on the Apple Store. I don't have an Apple phone because I hate Apple. Or I have a distaste for Apple, and I hate the fans of Apple. I'll put it that way. Um,
Yeah, I have an Apple phone because it's like having a PC for gaming. Like if you want all the good apps and all the good games, you kind of need a PC. It's like reversed on the handhelds. Like it seems like the iOS gets a lot of it, things no one else does, like this
yeah,
game, for example. So that was my justification.
definitely big money market. Yeah, and if you're also using it as a gaming device, it's probably worth the price. Yeah, but otherwise, f no. Like Apple it did made a brand loyalty like a cult like following on purpose. It was in their mission statement, but and people fell for that, and now they still think that they love it. I'm like, you don't love it. You clearly were operated on a few different ways psychologically, and you guys have no idea. Now you're arguing with me about that. You're like, no, no, I love it on my own volition. I'm like, that doesn't even mean anything. There's no such thing as a volition. You either like something or you don't because it's reinforcing. And the way that they did that was they looked at some of the psychology and was like, oh, well, we want to make cult-like followings and where they'll pay a lot more than what it's worth. So they literally said that in their mission statement. So whatever. What
Jeremiah's a
do I
lot of fun at dinner parties, by the way. These are the conversations we have.
know? Yeah,
No, you
some
do
of the
not
fun.
like it. Volition's not a real thing.
Oh yeah, people hate hearing that. But speaking of things that piss me off, a new Feminist Frequency came out by Anita Sarkeesian. Um,
Anita, how's she doing? What was this one about?
it wasn't. There were some good points and bad points, just like always. But this one was about violence against women, I guess, tropes in video games, and
Okay.
it was kind of like if I could just give a summary or an abstract, it would be that there's a big problem with people using women, violence against women as like a quick kind of shortcut bad person, like a twisting mustache kind of evil person. Before it
hmm
used to be if they have a mustache, they're thin, and they're wearing a black top hat, they're probably evil. Now it's like, well, if they attack women, then they're, pretty bad. And she showed a bunch of video games where people do that.
So she's
So
saying that like showing violence against women is just like a cheap way of saying this guy's an evil person
that was one of her
Be-
talking points, yeah. Um,
because women's lives are more valuable than men's, or why is that effective as a way of showing that the guy's evil?
well, that's the problem. She never took logic clearly because like she also refutes that same point later because she says women's lives are less valuable than men's, and that's why when they and then later she said, oh well, when they attack a man, it's no big deal, but when they attack a woman, we're supposed to, or it vindicates your justice or like yeah, it vindicates your violence against the man. You know, it like gives you justice to do it because there's no greater evil. And I was like, wait. But anyway, whatever. And like I said, a lot of good points. No, some good points in this one and a lot of bad points. Her last one had a lot of good points and some bad points, but this one was overall pretty bad. But the reason why it caught my eye is because apparently she had to like go into hiding because she got like a because this one was particularly stupid. I think this one was. I would give this one if I had to score it on 1 to 10. Like as far as like academic honesty, I would say like a 2 or maybe a 3. But I don't know if it's academic honesty. There's some of that, but there's also just like I can't tell if she's just not very smart and like she doesn't understand conflicting ideas or if she's being intentionally. I can't tell. So,
Wait, so she had to go into hiding though?
yeah, dude. Like apparently some people threatened her and her family, and they like found her somehow on the internet. It must be 4chan nerds or something, or
All right.
some neckbeards. It
See,
sucks.
this is the problem. Like, I read a couple articles today about how gamer as an identity is dying, and it's kind of going through these like violent backlashes because gaming's becoming so ubiquitous. It's not like
Hmm.
it's not just gamers who game anymore, and it's kind of like, no, you're taking away our toys, you're taking away our identity, and so like what we're seeing with these like completely disproportionate responses to stuff like this is
Hmm.
the dying breaths of an identity that's just like fighting its own irrelevancy. So there were a couple articles on that today, but this is, come on, gamers, we're better than that. Like, you can disagree with somebody without threatening their physical well-being. That's just ridiculous, and it vindicates their argument that misogyny is a problem. If you say violence against women is a huge problem, you're like, oh yeah, well shut up, woman, we're gonna find you and kill you. That doesn't really help your argument.
Yeah, using violence to shut someone up about violence is pretty dumb.
Yeah.
Someone who's saying violence is a problem, but definitely, I would never hurt someone, and I don't have bad blood about Anita Sarkeesian. I think she's just not all that smart. I'm not in the camp of people who think that she's like, she's
Manipulating.
evil. Yeah. I don't think I just don't think she's very smart. So there's a lot of things she says where you're like, well, yeah, well, you didn't really examine that, so that's not, and she's got a big microphone and doesn't have a whole lot going on upstairs. She's somewhat. I'd put her like a 115, 120 IQ or something. She's okay.
It's above average intelligence.
It is, but it's common. For graduate school, it's a little low. So
Okay.
for master's program, it's about average. But so she couldn't make it probably into a PhD program, and if she did, she'd kind of flounder. But anyway, or just statistically, I'd imagine because you
I
can't
heard.
you
I
can't.
heard. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you can't consume science one-sidedly. It's impossible. So like, or not possible. You'll fail out of grad school. So she's consuming stuff obviously one-sidedly, and then I'm like, well, okay, but you kind of want to say both sides. You kind of want to say, well, there's this, but this is why this is a bigger problem. And she has a lot of those points where she just says it's not a problem for the other people, or she doesn't mention it, but instead of like being a little more honest and saying like, look, this also happens over here, but this one's a little more important because of context or whatever.
On grad school, on PhD programs, I was talking to my advisor when I was finishing my master's about going on to get a PhD, and he gave me some advice. He said, now, the thing about getting a PhD is what you're doing is you're foregoing getting a lot of money now with the expectation that in the future you also won't get a lot of money.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Unless you're getting
Exactly.
a PhD in like a medical or psychology is profitable, but most of the academic ones, you're not gonna make a lot of money even when you get out.
Yeah, that sucks, man. But oh well, I could lament about the low pay of, or what's everything's wrong with the colleges right now. Did you know that there's oh man, these online diploma mills? Okay, well I won't
Yeah.
get into it, but
Yeah.
they're driving me crazy. Speaking of academic stuff, though, in video games, a study came out in Sweden. So I love Sweden. They always come with the funnest studies. Where MMOs are helping people read good. They're reading good.
Reading so good.
Yeah. So they looked at like
Do
six.
people read in MMOs? I thought we just clicked accept on the quest and moved on.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's just the chat log. They didn't really test that. They just looked at people who played MMOs and people who did not, and they found that obviously people who played MMOs were better, and it's it's a
Or just in
it-
general.
at reading. Yeah, good point. So it was across cross sectional, which means like it didn't take into account time and didn't control for a lot of variables, but it's still so you could make the argument is all I mean that like, oh, if you read well, then you would probably gravitate towards games where you read a lot,
Mhm.
but I would say that, but there's so much in the literature already to show that like practicing reading does make you better.
Yeah.
So I just
Oh, academia. Of course, there'd be literature that says practicing reading makes you better at reading. Of course, they would need studies for that.
well, dude, no, it's fascinating actually. Ever since I got into reading disorders and assessing them, it's really crazy. Like there some of it. There's different ways in which you read that are important, and different ways that don't help at all, but are completely intuitive. So it's actually pretty cool. But overall, yeah, reading typically helps with your comprehension, just not your fluency. So
Okay. It doesn't
anyway,
help with fluency?
no, well, in persons with reading disabilities. So
Okay.
people, and it's not how we learn. We can learn incidentally that way, but it's like whenever people try to make someone read faster by doing flashcards or something like that. That actually doesn't help. It helps their vocabulary, but it doesn't help them read faster. So especially with people with, like I said, dyslexia. So
Okay, reading fluency. I was thinking language fluency because I know that in French, that one of the best ways to become fluent is to read a lot of French novels
okay.
and such because then you start things start to sound normal to you, right? Like you'll start to have verb,
Mhm.
sentence structures. You're like, oh yeah, that's how things are said because I've been exposed to that kind of sentence structure a lot.
Oh, well, then that makes me feel better because I've been reading those French newspaper things now
Le monde.
yeah, Le Monde, to try to freshen up my French, français. But anyway, that's not recent news. And I am all out of news stories. Do you have any more?
No, that was the exciting stuff for me this week. We got
Cool.
some new announcements coming out on Nintendo, and I guess other people are doing things too. But I don't really pay attention too much to what Microsoft is doing. So,
Freaking Microsoft. All right. Well, great. Then I guess we can move on to the gaming experiences then. All right. This is the gaming experiences section where we talk about things that we played, proving we are indeed actual gamers, not just boring academic people.
academicians.
Yes, academicians. Yes. So I want to hear about this. The first one you're talking about. I'm excited about this. So go ahead. Go ahead. I'm excited.
All right, Mother 3. So, you know my stance on piracy. I'm not a fan, especially
Mhm.
in industries that you enjoy.
Right.
So, I really, really tried to purchase this legitimately. I went on Nintendo's eStore. I went everywhere. I even tried to find like just a copy of the game. It's so hard to find. It's super rare. Mother 3 is the sequel to Earthbound.
Earthbound.
Came
Okay.
out on the Game Boy Advance.
Now that was the one with the big old package, right? Like its packaging was like the size of like, well, I mean, what was it, like 3 foot by 2 foot or something? Like
Earthbound?
gaming stores. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Earthbound.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was this big old package. It caught my eye a lot, but
Yeah, I think it actually came with a player's guide, is why the package was so big.
okay.
And Nintendo had a weird marketing campaign for it where they would send out scratch and sniff like smells from the game, and they were all horrible smells that you wouldn't want to smell. Like, so yeah. Anyway, the sequel was called Mother 3 because Earthbound was actually Mother 2 in Japan.
So it was also a sequel.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've heard a lot of things about Lucas from Smash Brothers is from Mother 3, and I finally was like, you know what? Fine, I'm just gonna play it. So I got there's a fan translation that's really popular online. I got that and played it because it never came out in America. It's only in Japanese. Another reason why the game's so hard to find.
Okay. What do you think? Well, how is it?
This game is super weird. It's super weird. Like, if you try and go off the rails, like let's say you want to go someplace the game doesn't want you to go, instead of putting a pile of rocks or some fog or something, you'll get this little dialogue bubble that says, "Hey, there's a bunch of ants here. You don't want to step on them, do you? Yeah, you better not go this way."
That's very much like Earthbound. Like
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, it's very much like Earthbound. Like, first chapter you play as like Lucas's dad, and you're fighting a bunch of forest animals that got cybernetic enhancements. And then the second chapter you're playing this thief named Duster, and you're going through a ghost castle trying to find something really important that the guy who sends you on the mission says you'll know it when you see it. I'm not gonna tell you what it is because a thief knows what's worth stealing and what isn't, and you can press him for more details. You're like, yeah, but what am I stealing? He's like, well, I'll give you one hint. It's really shiny and looks really cool. Like, all right. So it's weird, man. It's the weirdest game I've ever played. It's weirder than Earthbound, but it's got a lot of the same fun stuff about that Earthbound had, like just random, you're fighting angry pill bugs and mean Mr. Crow.
Yeah.
But the battle system on this one's kind of a rhythm game. Each enemy has its own kind of music that plays when you fight it, and if you attack and you hit the button in sync with that rhythm, you can get combo attacks that way.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, exactly. Weird is the word for this game. It's a weird game. So I'm in chapter 2, still playing it, still having fun.
Wow, how many chapters are there?
I don't know, no idea. There's a guide, but I'm avoiding guides. I'm just trying to go through it on my own and see how it goes. So
Huh.
I haven't even gotten to play as Lucas yet, which is apparently the character they brought into Smash Brothers. So I have no idea how far I am in this game.
Okay, all right. Earthbound was pretty long though, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
never beat it.
it's I don't know, 60 to 80 hours.
Yeah, I put in a lot of hours, and I feel like I didn't even get out of the second town, or I just got out of the second town.
The second town, Tucson, before you go to Threed, and then
Uh,
Fourside.
I went. No, I guess I got to Foresight. I think Foreside's not the black place, isn't that like in space or something? I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I got to Sneed, I think.
So,
So
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's fun. So overall, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
If you liked Earthbound, you'll like this game. If you thought Earthbound was weird, like too weird for your taste, this game is going to be definitely too weird because it's weirder than Earthbound. But yeah, worth checking out, especially if you can find it somehow legally. I really tried. Like, you know how I how I am about these things. I really want to support the hobbies that I'm into, and I just really wanted to pay money for this. So Nintendo, give us a translation. We will happily buy it.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Well, actually, I've been playing some things that aren't weird. This game is freaking awesome. XCOM, you know.
Yes,
So
yes.
I talked about this before. Like, I loved XCOM Enemy Unknown, the original,
Hmm.
and an expansion came out. I just never bought it because it never hit my price point. And really, I was just being indignant because I knew I'd buy it someday because I love turn-based, tactical RPGs.
Right.
Love them. And this one is that, and it's also fully customizable. If it has customization, a grid-based combat system, and you can level up, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy that game no matter what. So like, of course I loved it. But the Enemy Within, there was a big sale. They've been having a few sales on Steam. I'm a PC gamer, and yeah, I saw it on there, and I was like, oh man, it was like $1 or something, $1.20. And then Tim got me the yeah, like I said, the skins pack, so I can put on some sweet helmets and armor and stuff. And
Hmm.
so I was like, well, I'm playing this, so I just signed away like a lot of time playing this game.
Yeah, I
Level
see you
before.
want it a lot on Steam.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and I also leave it up when I go do things. So like, it's kind of because it was on all night last night, I think, and I wasn't playing it. But yeah, so the cool thing is, I got like you're in there, you were in the dream, and so were you, Aunt May. Everybody was. No, made you a sniper, and I gave you this ability, man. Like you can totally customize your characters too, besides just their looks. So like, you get a couple choices at different levels. Of how you want to, make them. You can get like these snapshot kind of snipers where you're running and then you can pop up, your rifle and you shoot, or you can get these kind of like they just sit in the corner of the map and they just hit everything because they get something called squad sight, which is
Yeah.
like, yeah. So your squad calls in and they're like, oh, he's over here, man. So you can just like shoot it, even if you have a tiny beat on it. You've got the best chance. It's got like a percentage system, of how likely you are to hit the target and how likely you are to crit, and you get the highest one in your squad. So even if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can shoot through this tiny little hole. As long as you got a sight on the guy, you can kill him or shoot him. So it's super fun.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
Game's awesome, and it's also going to be, I'm going to mention it as well in the in-depth analysis because of the fact is it's got some things, well, it's got jobs in it, but it's got a few principles that are going to be important to talk about too.
Do you ever listen to Fear the Boot?
Yeah, I used to, not anymore recently.
They have a thing that they do on the side called XCOM. It's like an XCOM role playing thing where they'll play a game of XCOM. Like they'll have all their friends like tune in on stream, like Twitch or whatever, and they've made like you, they made all their friends in their squadron, but they're role playing it like it's them if the aliens invaded and they got like drafted into like a resistance force. And
Sweet.
so they'll do little fan fictions in between games. Like one of the characters died. Like they don't do any like resaves or anything. Like if you die, you die. And so like one of the characters died, and it was like this whole big thing. And like the other guy like just went super depressive. He's like, I can't believe my friend got killed, blah blah. And like this whole drama around XCOM.
that's wow, that's a lot of dedication.
Yeah, well, they take their role playing seriously over at Fear the Boot.
It's a fun game though, man. I mean, I love having your friends and like, oh man, there's this one where you get to do covert missions, and I was like, because counterintelligence agent. That's that was why I joined the counterintelligence.
Mm.
So yeah, I was like, oh yeah. So you go in with like a little pistol, and you got like this, like just go and get the job done, and then it always goes sour, of course. And so you got to have your, like someone come pick you up and extract you. And I
Mm.
always say like my closest friends, so I'm like. So they fly off the ship and you're in the middle of like nowhere, so they have to get to you and you have to get to them. So it's like this heroic kind of thing. Oh, it's so cool. That's something they added on the expansion as well. So it's really fun.
Sweet.
Oh, and I made Edge, right? So Edge is like this character that like is an abomination. I think we've talked about him on here before, haven't we?
Probably he's ubiquitous.
Yeah, exactly. He shows up in almost every video game because he's effing hilarious. He's a Frankenstein. Like what happened was we were playing Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago, as kids, and I was learning it kind of, and this is like I think my second character, but
Yeah.
my first fantasy character.
Yeah, it was your second character because your first one was a rapper.
The first one I think it was just me, but at any rate, so this was so I was like, I want to make an elven blade singer. I had read about these things, they're like elves that can kind of like they've got a really cool like way to fight, and if you can imagine like how an elf would fight, it's kind of like dancing and stuff,
Mm.
and they've got like a blade song that's like kind of magical. It's really cool. So I was like, I want to make one of those. It looks awesome, but the dice fell in such a way where that was just weird. And so because I had like a top max strength, and then in second edition you had to roll again for like absurd like crazy strength, and I got absurd crazy strength. I think I got double zeros, so I got like the biggest strength you could ever get in that game ever, and of course, Dave and Tim were like, yeah, you probably don't want to make that then. And I was like, well, what are these stats going to be good for? And you were like, well, a barbarian, like a disgusting game-breaking barbarian. I was like, all right. So Edge was born, right? But he was not smart, and he was really, really dumb, super low charisma, so like nobody liked him all that much. And or I think it was average charisma, if I remember right. So like, it's like, hey, he's all right. He's all right. He's not going to lead anyone, but, you can have him around. But,
He's gonna be the big tough guy in the background who doesn't talk much.
yeah, he was just so stupid. He had like animal intelligence. So he just shows, and this guy is a game breaker. Every time he shows up in a campaign, he breaks the game. He does something ridiculous. Like what? I don't remember if we've talked about this. Like whenever, so like we're playing JT, right, friend of the show. He's DMing a session, and he's trying to stop Edge. Don't ever do that. But because I like have to play him, you're kind of forced to play him as you would. And I was like, well, this crazy wizard is across this like really long bridge, and he's trying to he's like goading Edge, right? And Edge is like, like of course I have to lose my shit, so I raged, and I was like, oh boy, now I raged, and I'm gonna run across this pit, which I know has traps in it, but oh well, Edge doesn't know that, so he's just like, oh, starts running. Everyone's like, no, Edge, stop! And the crazy part is, all of a sudden I'm running, and I fall down a pit, obviously, but when I do, he's like, all right, you get a dex check to save yourself, and I was like, oh, okay, and then and we were like, dex check, no, but I rolled. And I rolled incredibly low, which was good back then. I rolled like a 1 or a 2, so like I not only caught it, like I like sprang out of it, like he catches it, and he's like, oh, just crawls out, and JT was like, oh crap. So he goes, he cast a spell that does metal bars around you, and like he's obviously stumbling over his words because I'm almost to him now. I'm like, oh, and then he cast, because he used his action on that. I was like, why do you already use his action? He's like, no, we readied an action. I was like, no, we didn't, but we just let it go. But so then he drops his cage on me, and what's great is you have a very small chance of bending bars, right? So I was just like, oh, I just grabbed the bars, and I was like, give me those dice. And I just rolled, and if somehow freakishly, a percentage die, I rolled 2%, which is you need a 1% or 1 or 2 out of 100. Out of 100 possibilities, you need 1 or 2, those exact numbers. And I got a 2, which is exactly what I needed. So I was just like, oh, just like tear him open, and I was like, I'm still coming for you, JT. And he was like, no. And so like when he got to him, I grabbed him, and he just teleported out. But the point is what did I do after that? I threw my axe at him, I think. So he was like, I teleported in. I was like, no, it was on cooldown. So I throw it and just killed him. He was like, that was my main character, man. He's my super boss. I was like, you don't piss off Edge ever. So like,
Yeah, Edge is a monster. He's like the Hulk, but like dumber.
Yeah, right. The Hulk of like fantasy world. So anyway, like I made him in this game too. He's a heavy, so he just like clogs up the lane and just shoots everything. But then in this new expansion, you can turn him into like disgusting like man machines. Have you heard about this?
Nope.
Oh, it's great. Like you completely sever their well, okay, you pull out their spinal cord and their head, and you would like you just push it into a machine, and then like wire it together. So like your arm is just like it looks like it's just like two pieces of metal basically with some wires in it. So like there's no muscle or anything in there. You're just a head on top of this like body that looks kind of like a human. And so when I got up from the surgery, and I had never done this, he's just like, all right, we're going to start the amputations. And I was like, what? And he's like, are you sure you want to do this, Commander? And I was like, not Edge. Heck yeah, he wants to do it. It makes him bigger. So, like, he comes back, and he's like, oh, and he's all like, weird machine thing. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. But then you put him inside of an exosuit that, like, this body fits in, and he's just massive. So it's awesome. But he's got, like, no emotions or anything now, so he's like, of course, Commander. Like, in the middle of, like, being blasted. He's a monster, man. And, of course, Dabby, my son, saw this, and he's like, I want to be a machine. So
More machine now than man.
it's hilarious, man. This game is so great. But, yeah, so that's a long-winded explanation of why I like XCOM, or at least the fun part I had in it. It's super fun, man.
Speaking of turn-based tactical RPGs, I bought Halfway. We talked about that last week.
Yeah. How is it?
Uh, you might like it more than I do, but it's trying to be survival horror and a turn-based tactical RPG, which ends up meaning you're going to run out of bullets and have to just punch things a lot.
Oh, no.
Yeah, ammo is a very limited resource in that game, and so you have to, unlike Resident Evil, where it's like ammo is a limited resource, so run away a lot. Like you have to clear the map before you can move on. So you can't just run away from the zombies. You have to shoot them, but you're gonna run out of bullets. So good luck with that, says the game.
Oh, that's... Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. You should play it sometime and tell me what you think. Maybe I'm missing something, but it was no XCOM, sir.
Ah, that game's so great. Okay. Yeah. Oh man, oh man. And so last part before we go. I opened this one door, and it's like I think it was this was Tim, and he opens this little sliding door, and he's all by himself, and this massive like disgusting machine comes out, and it's like she turns around. It's like got these like weird chicken-looking legs, and it's like this massive gun platform with two huge blasters on it, and it just annihilates Tim. It was just like, and just he turned into dust, and not really. He just hit the ground, and I went and stabilized him. But I was like, oh my god! So I was like, only one thing can defeat this: the Edge machine. So they go up. And you can upgrade it different ways, and one of them I just did a punch. It was like, do you want like a flamethrower? And I was like, ooh, that's pretty edgish. And it was like, or just a super punch. And I was like, that does not seem like a good idea, but I'm definitely getting the super punch. So it's this massive like kind of piston that attaches to your arm that just shoots forward. And so I walked up, and apparently it knocks them back too. So the first thing I did, I just come running in after it annihilates Tim, and Edge is just like, fuck you, get fucked. So like I just hit the button to kinetic, and I never used it before, but it knocks him back, and he goes flying these canisters, and they explode, and he like falls down on the ground. And I was like, this is great. I love this game. Anyway, I'm done. Yeah, so I guess we could probably get into in-depth analysis before I get too giddy about XCOM again.
Before you lose your mind.
Yeah, so all right, fine. Let's do the freaking in-depth analysis. All right, this is the in-depth analysis. Great. So this is a Labor Day Work is Play is the name of the episode, and it's about games where you kind of just do jobs. Where you're just kind of working.
Yeah, you're not on a quest to save the princess. You're not racing a ship down an exploding corridor. You are just clocking in and going to work day in and day out.
And these are becoming more popular.
Like, somehow.
Well, remember back in the day, like, were there any games like? Okay, my first experience with these was you. So I'm sitting there, and David's in his gaming basement. That basement was so cool, man. Anyway,
the gaming basement.
The gaming basement. So like they built this room. So his dad was a lawyer, and they built like a new house. Like over time, building this thing, they built this basement, and it was basically just like cement. What are those mason blocks, kind of things, yeah. With like a carpet and some soundproofing because.
We get loud.
Do that. We get loud. and it was just a big nondescript open room, and basically, who was someone brought like a couch down there,
Yeah, we like drug a couch down there and set up an old TV, threw in a GameCube and a Super Nintendo, N64.
and we were set. And that's all that's down there. So it's just like against the wall in this massive room, like over huddled in the
None
corner,
of the
just like
space being utilized.
yeah, just a couch and just a little crappy old TV with a little wooden like thing to set it on.
And like
And
a and like one of those like wood tables eventually with like Foley chairs for D&D.
yeah, we slowly started adding more and more. So it got pretty awesome. Pretty soon we had a Pikachu shrine that we put up. There's all kinds of things, but first it was just that. So I come, trotting down the stairs. I go over to David's house as I was wont to do, and he's playing a game. And I walk over there. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm playing Harvest Moon." I was like, "Harvest Moon? What is this game?" And essentially he's this little guy with a stupid little hat and like anime hair, and he's walking around. He's just like digging dirt, and he was crushing rocks and like moving the rocks other places. I didn't know what was going on, but
Harvest Moon, just harvesting.
yeah, that's the funny thing. I was like, what's the point? And you were like, oh, I just get a big harvest.
Just get a big harvest.
You're like, just make it through. I don't want to fall asleep in the field, so I got to go in soon. I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, that's the narrative. Don't fall asleep. He's like, well, pretty much, yeah, for right now.
Yeah, eventually you'll have to start watering your crops. Got to water them every day, though. If you miss a day, they'll start to wither. But on rainy days, you don't have to water your crops. That's really cool because then you can go out and explore the mountain.
In the rain. But yeah, were there any other games like that back then?
Well, there's Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo, and then they re-released it on everything since then. But that was the earliest one I can think of. Also, The Sims, Sims 1, kind of the same premise. Just going to work, cooking, cleaning, doing my chores, going to sleep. Don't forget to brush your teeth and take a shower. Oh, you didn't pee. Now you got to pee. Your Sim's upset.
Yeah, that's the self-maintenance mod. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. There's like a whole lot of them. It feels like you've got like the Euro Train Simulator or Big Truck Simulator where you just drive a fucking truck full of stuff.
Or Animal Crossing, same kind of thing. Tamagotchi Life. Lots of these games where you're just doing mundane things that you probably are neglecting in your real life in order to play this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're just repetitive nonsense. Like you'll sit back one day and be like, like, especially when you're playing The Sims, you're like, I just spent more time trying to make my Sim's life better. Like I'm upping his social and his fun, and I'm trying to teach him how to play guitar. Like I could have learned how to play the guitar in real life had I spent that same amount of time. But why is it so much more appealing to have this guy who looks just like me, who has my name on The Sims, improving his life?
Yeah, The Sims is particularly funny because one time you walked in, and I was playing Sims, and he says, and David walks in, he's watching me over my shoulder for a second, and then he says, why are you not sitting in a chair? I was like, I am. I told him to sit down. He'd been standing here forever, and he was like, no, you. And I was like kneeling by my desk because I think I was getting something out, and I was like, oh yeah, The Sims. Let me just I don't even remember. But yeah, it's just so like I was clearly self-neglecting myself. I put my Sim in a chair because he was uncomfortable not sitting, and I was kneeling right next to a real chair. Yeah, it was so weird. That game.
These games, I don't know how to describe the genre. They're kind of simulation RPG hybrids.
Yeah.
But why are they so fun? Why is doing the same, like especially Harvest Moon, right? Like waking up every day, watering all the plants, going and talking to the girl you're trying to court, giving her like a berry, and then going home and then doing the same thing the next day. And the only thing that breaks up the monotony are occasional holidays and like days where it's raining so you don't have to water that day. Why do we play these games? Why are they so fun?
And you're saving up for like a bigger barn and stuff like.
Like buying another cow and like maybe with the new cow revenue you can afford more seed next harvest so you can get a bigger crop.
Yeah. Yep, they are really weird. And they seem to be like getting a little more popular nowadays. But yeah, it's crazy. So it seemed appropriate to talk about those on Labor Day because they're labor games about labor. Manual labor usually. It's usually not something like huge. Although there are like those, like one is a political simulator. Have you heard about that? I think it's called Democracy.
Yeah, Democracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got that. Pretty crazy. But there's quite a lot going on in that, like psychologically. A lot of it has to do with behaviorism. But yeah. Before I start on that diatribe, is there? I mean, much else? Anything else before I start?
Well, one thing that I noticed that makes them kind of fun are the RPG elements. Like you'll gradually increase your skills in The Sims. You know, like I level up my cooking. Like we'll joke about that in real life. Like when I learn a new
Yeah.
recipe, I'm like, my cooking just got one higher. Or on Harvest Moon, like sometimes you can upgrade your tools. You know, like I used my shovel so many times that it got better because that's how tools work.
Yeah.
Now it's a golden shovel. So
Yeah.
like it's just the gradual increasing of property and equipment. It's almost like leveling up your character, but you're leveling up your farm. So it's got those same kind of elements we talked about in JRPGs and the MMOs, where you just want to see yourself get to that next milestone.
Hmm.
So that's one thing when I was thinking about why am I playing these games that kind of leapt to mind.
Yeah, yeah. Now RPG elements like are pervasive in almost everything because yeah, they're definitely operating on a pretty basic psychological principle. It's hard to get around. It's because a lot of things have these elements in them. It's just these are completely unabashed about them. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna like it even though it's work.
You're gonna like it despite the fact that you really shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter, and that's why like people talk about game design a lot, and like and I'm like, well, aesthetics are very important, but they're kind of incidental as far as like a addictive game goes. If you want something that's operating on something on a level where people call quote unquote addictive, which just means like I can't stop playing it and I don't know why. That's not really addiction, but that's colloquially what people mean.
Right.
That would be behaviorism. So like when people are obsessed with creating game stuff, and I'm like, well, that's important. Get a good aesthetic, get a good story. That way, it's meaningful for people, but it doesn't have to be. They're still gonna play it. Like the meaningful stuff is fun and it helps
Yeah,
in the
it'll
interim.
make them less like angry that they're playing it.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of like when we talk about face validity on measures like assessments in psychology. Face validity means like and in therapy. So like let's say if you were depressed or if you had I don't know panic attacks, and for some reason the way to fix that was like jumping on a trampoline.
Right.
Like that's weird. But if it works, it's valid. That's a valid therapy. But it has no face validity. So selling that to a client is difficult because
Doesn't make sense.
yeah, they don't want to do it. And the funny thing is, if they don't like, it's like if I say, hey, watch this movie, it's the greatest movie ever, and then I show you an average movie, you're not gonna be so into it, right? Or if like, or like if I say like, here's a workout that doesn't really work, and even if it does, and then they go and do it, they're gonna have less energy, they're gonna be less motivated to do it, right? And so
Mm.
it'll be self-fulfilling prophecy. It won't work. So like that's the same thing with like jumping on the trampoline. It's like you have to find a way to sell it to them and make them believe it so that they will engage in it with the right amount of like kind of attachment. They continue to do it. They don't like slough it off, and they actually want to do it. They make time in their schedule to do it. So psychology is kind of funny that way, where we have to like figure out a way to sell it to the person. It's not just like medical, where we're just like, here, take it,
Right.
swallow this. But anyway, yeah. So that's kind of what the aesthetic and game design, other elements do. But as far as game design for like what makes it addictive and what gets them playing, and then it decreases the time they're not playing.
Hmm.
Yeah, decreases the time they're not playing it. That's behavioral stuff. So like, we kind of talked a little bit about this in the World of Warcraft episode, I believe, or Warcraft episode.
Right,
But
like the reinforcement schedules.
yeah, yeah. But there's something kind of specifically funny about these. Well, first of all, I think there's something that we like to engage in things, and we like to see things like grow and stuff. A lot of people, make gardens or they work with their hands. Like, some people like, I know a guy who whittles. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
carving.
Yeah,
Um,
we as a species almost have this kind of instinctual need to create or watch
right,
something or nurture something into something else or see our Charmanders evolve into Charizards.
right, yeah. So having something there after you've done something is very rewarding for us. I still think this is horrible, but I still think even though all the people I've helped in psychology and everything else, I still feel a lot better about like not a lot better. I still remember fondly the days when I was working landscaping because
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, same with me. Like I'll have a whole year teaching students, and then I'll go home for the summer and I'll mow my parents' yard, and I'll just feel way better about that day's work than any day in the classroom. Just looking over my shoulder and seeing the yard get mowed, or at the very end when it's all neatly trimmed, I'm like, yeah, that's a good yard.
yeah, exactly. And so every time you go outside, it's a reminder. It's a small reinforcer. It's like, oh, that's nice. So for as little time as you put on that, you get a lot out of it. Same thing with, like, when you create something, people who are crafty and they put something up and they look at it and they go, oh, look what I did, that's great. That's like a constant reinforcer. Whereas like something like academics, like kind of what I'm in, and then now that you're in, like you're teaching people things. There's no like. There's a lot of like, here's what you did wrong, but it's not like the kid has like a number 4 above his head when he had number 3 earlier when he came
Yeah.
in, and a number 1 at the beginning of the year.
Right. We
It's
should we should start making kids do that.
we should, yeah, because I mean it'd be more rewarding for the teacher. We like to see a tangible growth, so that it continuously reinforces us rather than just like one random person maybe in 2 years of teaching say like, "Oh, you did good,"
Thanks for being a good teacher.
because it makes you feel good, but it's not as yeah as often or as fecund, I guess I would say, but
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, it sucks. So with this, you've got that going on with the Harvest Moon. You're slowly first you got like a little 3x3 plot.
Yeah. First, you just have a crappy yard that you got to clear all the rocks and wood out of, and then
Yeah. But when you do
slowly
it,
turn that into a farm.
but you're making real progress. Like you look over there, and the next day when you get up, you run out there, you're like, oh, I already cleared all this, sweet. And then you make a little fence, and then you've got something to work with the next day. It's great. And that's why it's so important to put a visual indicator of level. Like whenever people do a level, some games don't do this, and all games should do this. Put an XP bar that shows it going up. You want that constant reminder when you log back in of how much you've done, because it's that whole endowed progress thing in psychology where if someone feels like they've done a lot, or sunk cost fallacy, where if they feel like they've done a lot, they don't want to quit, and they feel like, oh, I need to put more into this. So yeah, that's definitely going on. But then you got like just simple behavioral things. So like important things in behaviorism are like 3 things. So this is for parents or for anyone. If you're trying to like on Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon is trying to he's trying to shape Penny's behaviors. So if you want to do this with your girlfriends or yourself or your boyfriends or your dads or your son or whatever, if you're trying to shape someone's behavior, there's 3 things that are really important. Well, 4 things that are really important. Here they are. It's real easy. Magnitude, duration, latency, and then the schedule you put them on. So magnitude means like how big it is, right? So like, hey, look, you picked the thing up off the floor. Let's go to Disney World. That would be super high magnitude.
Right.
Yeah. And then or something low magnitude would be like, oh man, you just saved the world. Thanks.
Attaboy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're welcome. Duration, obviously, it's just like it sounds. Like how long does it last? Like Disney World's a whole day, right? Thanking someone's very short. Giving someone a birthday, like the full day, is much better than like just doing it dinner. As far as like the magnitude or the duration goes. And finally, latency. Now this is the one most people don't think about. But it's very important because a weaker response rate. Okay, so we measure these things over time, and you get a graph that looks like this. This is really cool. Is where the science comes in. So on the x-axis, or the part on the bottom, if you're visualizing the graph, the base, the part at the bottom that goes horizontally, it goes time. So you've got like when you started your reinforcement schedule, and then at the right's like however far you want to keep it going, right? And then you've got the y-axis, which is the up and down one. That's the vertical one. And on that, it's the response rate, so the frequency of responding. So like for this, it's like how often are they going to play the game, or how often are they going to plot something in the land, or whatever behavior we're looking at, right? Or like in the Sims, like how often are they going to engage with their sim, for example? In the driving games, like how long or how off? That'd probably be probably command inputs, because it's anyway, whatever. The point is that you get a graph that starts looking like over time. If it's really a sharp shot upwards, that means it didn't take much time to get them doing it a lot, right? And if it's like a real low one, like it barely moves up, that means it's working, but it's just taking a lot of time. So a lot of people, I bring that up for a reason, because when you're designing a game, in a game like this, it's really important to do the low one first. You don't want to shoot them right out of the gate, because it can be alarming to people. If they're like, whoa, that's super fun, they start playing it like crazy, they can get burned out quickly. So you want to like introduce something that will slowly get them up. So there are certain schedules that reliably do this. So the slow
like
one,
Harvest Moon will start off with a small plot of land, and you get bigger land, and your farm's growing exponentially bigger as you play, and therefore you're doing more stuff with it.
Yeah, exactly. So like there's kind of, when we talk about reinforcement schedules, and we've talked about these a little bit, but I'm going to retouch on it because there's something important that has to do with these. First of all, is like the interval. So there's 2 ways to reward someone: by interval or by ratio. Now we've talked about this. So do you remember what that means?
So interval is like every 3 hours you're playing Harvest Moon, something good happens.
Right, right.
And the ratio is like Warcraft's model, where you're going to level up like 10 times in the first hour of gameplay, and then at the end you're going to level up once every 7 days or something.
Right, yeah. So ratio means like as many behaviors as you do, then either 1 to 1 or 5 to 1. So the behaviors to the times you're reinforced. So like, for example, like with my kids sometimes they pick 5 things up off the floor and then you can blank, right? And that's
Mhm.
it. That's a fixed ratio. So for every 5 he brings up, it's fixed. It's never going to change, and they're going to come and give me, and they get a reinforcer. Then you got like variable ratio, which is like, well, keep coming and bringing me stuff, and then sometimes I'll give you one right away, sometimes I'll give you one, much later. And then finally you've got your interval ones, that's fixed and variable too. So you got like the fixed things, which is like, okay, so every 5 minutes you're in the park, you level up or whatever. Like in these games, it would be like, so for well, yeah, fixed interval would probably be like growth rates. So like your plants grow at a certain rate.
Mhm.
And so what happens is with those behaviors is it's funny. People will do them a lot right around the reinforcer. So as the reinforcer's coming up, they're like, oh, behavior, 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 like, oh, behavior, behavior, and then they get reinforced, and then they kind of slow back down in the sloughs in between. So
Mhm.
like that is usually when most people in the games quit games. That's a good stopping point, right? Quote unquote.
Right.
That's what they say. They say like, oh, I just got that level. I'm not going to get another one for a while, so I am going to go ahead and log out, right? Like if
Mhm.
you're a level would be a ratio, but let's say really a lot of times when you're just doing anything in a game, it becomes more of an interval. In like games like Guild Wars, where whatever you're doing, you're kind of gaining experience.
Mhm.
But yeah, so people are likely to log off. Now you don't want that in games like this. What's so genius about these games and like XCOM is that they don't rely on that fixed interval, right? It's
Mhm.
more about it's a lot. I call it serial quests. Like it's like a lot of little tasks that are constantly on different layers, and they're rewarding you. The reward rate is pretty high, right? There's not a good time to log off. Let's put it that way.
Right, because each thing you do like leads to something else you could do.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, latency. Did I mention latency? Latency means like when you like how long you wait before you reinforce someone. So like in all cases, there's never a case where you want a longer latency. So always your latency, you always want that to be short. But there are different times when you want your magnitude and your duration to change.
Right.
But because you want them to tie that to that behavior. And what's important is you've heard of Pavlov's dog, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was like a fixed. Well, that wasn't. That was classical conditioning. So they would ring the bell, present the food, ring the bell, present the food. What's funny is they did that 100% of the time. So it was a fixed ratio, 1 to 1, right? Every
Mhm.
time I ring the bell, I'm gonna give you food and reinforce you, right?
Mhm.
And so they would salivate. Well, when they went down to 80%, so that means 4 out of 5 times they would still ring the bell. The response rate of the Cocker Spaniels, which they were using, went down to I think 20 or 30. It was a huge drop in the salivation rate. So it's really important to be consistent. That's why latency is so important. They have to get that reinforcer right afterwards. So like when you get your little your harvest moon, your little thing or whatever it is that's growing for you, super
Mhm.
important.
My potato.
Your potato. When do those potatoes come in? That's important. But so the slowest responding, so the ones that like get you going but really slow, like it's not really super addictive, but it's kind of sneakily addictive, is the variable interval. So like like, oh, sometimes I get this when I'm in for a little while, sometimes I get it when and I put achievements like this. Hidden achievements are really what this is, because you don't know what you're doing for achievements. They just pop up every once in a while and they make you feel good.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like random, like in Harvest Moon, sometimes you'll just randomly dig up something awesome when you're digging.
Yeah, and that would be almost like a variable ratio because it's based on your behavior of digging. But then again, functionally, it could be an interval because if you're always digging, then it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Yeah. So if you're just digging a lot during the game, then that does kind of serve as a variable interval. So it's like this slow, steady thing of like, it might happen, but that doesn't really keep you playing the game, does it? Like
No,
just that.
it's just like a nice bonus.
Right, exactly. So you want that working in there, but you want to start cruising that off right away. So you want to pop that in early and introduce it. So like you're doing your little 6x6 kind of plugging around, or like let's say you're any of these work simulators. There's one where you punch tickets for people. I think it's called Papers, Please. That kind of thing. So true story. So you want to do that early just to show that like, ooh, there's a hidden surprise, and then you'll see this response rate start going up, right? Of people playing the game, and then you also want to introduce at that point you want to introduce the next most effective one, which is fixed interval. So that one's the worst one, variable. Fixed interval is the next best one, which is like, oh, look, I'm logged in over a certain amount of time, and I get things, right? Like maybe it keeps track of hours and gives you something. Like for this, maybe like the seasons go by, and for every season you get going by, you get like a someone stops at your door and gives you some money or something, right, in the game. You want to introduce that, and then you get a little higher response rate. It starts climbing, right? People are playing the game a little bit more, a little bit more. They're engaging in these things, but they're still not focusing on any one behavior, right? They're just playing the game because it's about interval. So they're just logged in and they're playing and they're just loving it. That's when you start to introduce the ratios. So this one is super fun. These are the most effective, variable and fixed. So like fixed ratio, you've got it works the best in the sense that it gets the number of responses up the fastest. So that means that like every time someone does something, like every 20 times someone does something, they get something. So like in that game, Harvest Moon, you're dropping those things inside that little box, and then you get paid for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a fixed ratio. So if you put 4 in, you get paid a certain amount. If you put 5 in, you get more.
Uh-huh.
So like you're like, ooh, I want to maximize that. So you start dropping all those like little potatoes in there like crazy, and it's gonna get your response rate pretty high. But a variable ratio would be like, when I do something like every time I water a plant, maybe it'll turn into a super plant or something like that. And that one does not work as quickly at getting your response rates up, but it's the best for making someone do something after you pull the reinforcers away. So that means like sustaining a behavior, right? It's like a lot of parents or other people in general, like I'm not going to reinforce someone, every 5 times, what if I'm not around? Or every 10 times, what if I'm not around? Or whatever. And then I'm like, well, if you want it to continue going on for the rest of your life and someone to call it, quote unquote, that's part of my personality, then, and that's how they talk like Minnie Mouse.
Yeah.
People, when they're talking about ratios.
Hey, woohoo!
Variable ratio! Reinforcement schedule! But this is the best one, so you want to like randomly reward them. It's not first you want to get the response rate up like crazy with a fixed ratio, and then you want to go down to the variable ratio. So anyway, in this game, so like you've got your fixed ratio of like of every time I dump this in, however hard I work, I get that amount of money. But then you want some kind of variable ratio to start making it so that once the money becomes less important to them at higher levels, they continue playing the game. That's when you introduce that's what the variable ratio is responsible for.
So like on The Sims, like a fixed ratio is every time you go into work, you come back with a certain paycheck, and then after working so long, you'll eventually get a promotion and get like the bigger paycheck each time. But a variable ratio would be like sometimes random events happen at work, and like you could possibly get like a super promotion, or you could possibly get demoted, like just like random little fun things that happen.
Yeah, like it's that's exactly right. Like what you mentioned, gradually increasing skills, and that's a fixed ratio. Like, 'cause, every time you do a couple things, you get an opportunity to up your skills, which is leveling up. And the variable ratio is like loot. Because another thing you said RBG elements, gradually increasing skills, and then things like loot, like little goodies. The loot is going to be that variable ratio. You do some things like you kill monsters, or in this you dump so many, or you mine so many things, and eventually you get like a better pick or whatever. That would be a variable ratio. So those are the most addicting elements of that. But then you get RPG elements, which is I would argue that those are interval because you're going to be playing the game anyway, and so if as long as you're leveling when you're doing anything and not just like farming or whatever, or not just like in The Sims, like I guess in The Sims, yeah, if you're paid on like a salary or something, or you get a raise on like at a certain point, no matter what, that would be like an interval. So those kinds of things. Yeah, this stuff works like crazy. I mean, we've shown this on pigeons, on rabbits, on rats, human children, human adults. Like this works on every level. And the funny thing is, so many people lower the amount they think is responsible for this, but this is like the most important part. You can make someone like the tasks we've used are absurd. Like what was one of them? Putting pennies in a jar. What was the other ones? We can get people doing these like crazy. A rat sticking his nose in a little hole, a specific hole, things like that. It's crazy. It's crazy. When humans too. Yeah, of course humans.
So let me ask you about something. Animal Crossing is kind of like Harvest Moon, but they introduced a new element where if you don't log in, like it keeps track of what time it is in real life. So if you don't come in every day, it knows you've been gone, and people start moving out of your town. Or if some guy says, "Come by at 3 o'clock, I want to talk to you," and you skip that appointment, then like you see him the next day, he's kind of pissy. Like, why didn't you come by yesterday at 3 o'clock? So it introduces this kind of like negative repercussions for not playing, which in my experience, like it started off making me want to like, I gotta log in, I don't want to mess up my town. But once I missed a day, like it almost became kind of like, well, you know what, it's too late now, and I completely lost interest in the game altogether. And like now, one of the things that keeps me from going back to Animal Crossing is it's been like a year since I've logged in, and I'm afraid of what I'm gonna find when I come back. So, what do you think about these negative kind of repercussions for behavior?
Yeah, people introduce this. Oh, so punishment, right? Like
Yeah.
punishment is anything that lowers the probability that you're going to do something in the future, right? So actually, you can. Yeah, okay, so yeah, using aversive conditioning can be a reinforcer, right? So like that would be like things like if a rat comes in and puts his nose in the wrong hole, I go and I play a big loud noise that scares the crap out of him. Or in this case, like people are moving out of this town that you lovingly created. That's
Hmm.
got to be kind of aversive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you don't want it. So then you're like, oh well, I don't want that thing, so I'm going to increase my response rate. So it's actually reinforcing your behavior, but
Hmm.
it's through aversive conditioning. Now this is really important. I talk about this in marriage, and I talk about this with people with kids. Don't do that because the thing that sucks is you see it immediately, right? Like you see this like burst in behavior, right? This upping, right? So it
Yeah.
seems to work. They say like my kid doesn't listen unless I beat him. Of course it works for a second, but like you said, over time you reliably see that behavior fall because they're gonna screw up. Everyone screws up always screws up.
Hmm.
In life, we're gonna drop the ball sometime, and if the punishment is super high, the person's gonna start not liking that context or that game, and they're gonna be like, ugh. And plus, like you said, it keeps you from coming back. It keeps people from admitting they're wrong. For example, it keeps people if you make it aversive for someone, if you're like, just say you're sorry, and then when you do, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, you're like, see, you did it wrong, and then later you're like, oh, you remember when you did that wrong thing? And then I'm like, oh, don't do that. You need to make that reinforcing for him or her to say I'm sorry.
Right.
Say thank you for saying that. That means a lot, and then absolve the argument and stop being a dick, and then just go let yourself kind of chill out for a second. Make it reinforcing for them. But like with this, the punishment, it shows like a marked like increase if you punish like a bad behavior. You see
Yeah.
an increase in response rate. So like this, like you start playing the game some more. You're like, oh man, I can't stop playing. But then over time, like you said, like if that happens a few times, because life's gonna get in the way, it's gonna happen sometime along the way in the game. You're gonna get one of those sloughs where you're not responding as quickly, in the fixed interval schedule, and
Hmm.
then you're gonna be like, oh man, I have punishment again. And then after a while, you're gonna stop. This is what I say. You're gonna become a secondary punisher. You look at the game like, well, it's fun, but it kind of does make my life a little more miserable because I'm a little like neurotic around it.
Right. Yeah. Like I feel like you said, it was very efficient. Like it kept me logging in obsessively because I didn't want to get punished, but eventually it kind of was counterproductive to me playing the game because I didn't want. I was like, I've gotten punished so much at this point. There's no point in logging in.
Yeah, so when you added punishment, it's just like you said. When you added punishment to these interval schedules, what you get is you get like a kamikaze effect, right? So like
Hmm.
the response rates skyrocket for a minute, but then it always drops off and just dies off. But if you want someone to do something for the rest of their life, don't use punishment. Like if you're clever, you can find a way to reinforce things. Like 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 logging off, for example. Like if you punish that by time spent away, you
Hmm.
could punish that if you're not very clever. But if you're clever and you want to keep someone doing something for a long time, then what you do is you respond them for amount of time, or you do a competing behavior and you reinforce that. So a competing behavior would be length of time logged in, right? And you super pump that up and just resist the press to go ahead and like go, well, but we'll get a bigger burst if we go ahead and punish it, their time logged off too. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but they will drop off soon. If you want someone to play something forever, you don't punish them for it. But yeah, and what's funny is when you get punished for something, like you actually lower someone's behavior of something, like for example, if you bring your kid to this happens all the time. Oh my gosh, parents, please don't do this. Not that there are a lot of parents out there, but there are a few. So I'll talk to you guys, and everyone else figure out how to apply this to your life, like with loved ones or people. Um, I do it all the time, and I'm pretty upfront about it. I'm like, oh wait, I have to punish myself for this. Sorry. Or with Amy, I'm like, oh, I have to reinforce you now, and then I do. So like, because it's true, and once you realize it and you stop like kind of like pretending like we do things for volition, it becomes like really cool. We have a great marriage, and we talk about those things all the time. But okay, so what you want to do is you'll notice something called an extinction burst. And what that means is this. Okay, I'll give you the kids example. So like you bring your kid. I'm sure you've seen this, David. You've been to Walmart, right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen like kids act up in Walmart?
Yeah. Like in the
Right.
line, checkout line.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever, this may or may not have seen this, have you ever seen the parent give the kid something like a phone or candy or something?
Right. Like they're throwing a fit. Oh, here, have a candy bar off of the checkout line thing and appease them.
Right, it's mutually reinforcing, right? So like the mom is more likely to give the kid the thing again because the kid shut up, and the kid is more likely to whine again because they got that game or whatever
Right.
or the candy. So that's not good though because over time it starts that starts they start screaming at the line every time. And what if you don't have your phone? And more importantly, like I don't want to give them my phone every time. Maybe I'm on it, that kind of thing, or
Right.
the candy. So so then what you want to do is I tell parents like at that point, all right, so next time you want to go for a very short time, just walk in the building and then walk out. Just grab something small like a loaf of bread from the very front or something. At my Walmart they got those little loaves of bread for like $1.
Mm.
Just grab that and walk out. And if the kid cries, ignore it. Just walk out because they're trying to get something. You want to decouple that reinforcer from that behavior. So like just don't say anything. Just walk in, walk out, let the kid cry. If the kid falls down, pick him up and just walk him out or whatever. And then over time, like you want to keep doing that until you can grab a loaf of bread and the kid won't cry, and then you can walk in a little further and spend a little more time, and over time he'll get it. But at first you get this funny thing called an extinction burst, and what that is the kid or the person or rat or anything. It doesn't take like a lot of people assign like some kind of thoughts to it. And I'm like, that's not relevant. Pigeons do this. Everyone does this. So like, let's say you put a pigeon inside of a little operant conditioning chamber, and a little thing, and every fifth time it pokes, or every time, let's say every time, it pokes, just like when the kid, every time they get in the line they cry, every time the pigeon pokes, it gets a little treat.
Mm.
Well, all of a sudden it stops getting it. And same thing with a kid in the supermarket. All of a sudden the kid does not get the phone or the treat. What kind of happens if they normally cry and get it? And then this time they say, no, you know what? Not this time. You're not getting the phone. What happens?
They freak out. You just change the rules on them.
Yeah, then that's called an extinction burst, and that's not just kids. Like it doesn't take any understanding. It's just human nature. Worms do this. Dogs do this. Cats do this. Everybody does this. It's a kind of a what the fuck, and then it tries it again, and then again,
It's
and again.
human nature. Dogs do it. Worms do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When people say like, well, the problem is like, that's what bugs me is like a lot of parents are like, oh, they're testing me. They think that if I do it, then this. I'm like, no, they don't think anything. They may
They're
think
just
that, but that's
yeah,
incidental.
they're just
Everybody.
reacting.
Literally, we've shown this in worms. It does not matter. Bacteria, everybody does this. This is just organisms responding to their environment. It takes no thought. So like, it's just something. So all I'm saying is be cool with your kid. They're not actively defying you. This is just how things behave. This is how we interact with our environment. So you get that extinction burst. So what sucks is that extinction burst can make people panic, and then instantly they reinforce. Like, okay, here. But then you've just upped the ante. So like, for game designers and stuff, whenever people do this and they're like, oh, people are starting to log out more, oh, I'm going to throw some reinforcer towards them. And I'm like, no, let the extinction burst go first. That's supposed to happen. Anyway, or just never use punishment in general. But if you're going to use punishment to do something, then don't do it. But, extinction burst, like I said, can happen even during, or it happens during the lap when you drop a reinforcer from something. So, yeah. Oh, and lastly, the reason why you don't just go straight towards the super effective reinforcement schedules, like the fixed ratio and variable ratio in these games, the reason why they shouldn't is because you've got something else, competing behavior. That's like real world behaviors, like being married or going to work or like watching a TV show. If your game starts to encroach on that, what do you think happens?
So like it kind of forces a confrontation. Like same thing that happens if your girlfriend says, "I don't like your friends. You either stop hanging out with them or you stop going out with me." And you're kind of forcing a collision of something that you might not necessarily win.
Right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like if you get to the point where you're like, man, I might get fired from my job, or my wife might leave me because I'm spending all this time on the game. Well, usually the game's not going to win that confrontation.
Right. Exactly. So as a game designer, you do not want to do that. What you want to do is allow the person to be able to make increasing amounts of time for his game and make that socially acceptable. So that's why you want to show. I know this sounds evil, but this I'm just telling you, if you want to do this the way that other people are trying to do it, because companies are trying to do this, it's just they're not as good at it. So, or they don't understand it probably because they don't have scientists on there. Some of them do now, actually. A lot of games do, but Yeah, the way you do it is you want the person to be able to make it more and more socially acceptable that they withdraw and play their game. And so to do that, you have to give them time, and because those people around them that normally see them more often need to kind of have a slow deterioration of expecting that person to be around. And I know this is horrible, but I'm just saying this is if you want to maximize your dollars, which most games do, then this is what you want to do.
So you have to start off slow with a minimum time commitment, and then slowly increase it as the people get used to it.
Yeah, and you want the person to be able to the people around them to say stuff like, like, oh, you're playing games too much, and then slowly that becomes they punish, and then that becomes the response rate decreases to zero. Because every time when you punish someone long enough, it can't sustain a behavior for a long time. That's the thing about punishment. That's why I keep telling people don't use punishment as your go-to. You don't even want to use it if you can at all, but definitely don't use it as your go-to because over time it decreases and it goes to baseline where it doesn't matter if you punish them or not, the person just keeps doing whatever they're doing because they don't care anymore. That's why like drugs, for example, like people who are on drugs, if you wanted to hook someone on a drug, like what you'd want to do is like you don't want to have them start doing it like crazy every day for like for a week because everybody in their life's going to put pressure on them and they're likely to quit, so like, and just like in a game, same thing, like, or anything, running, it doesn't matter, it could be good for you, it could be bad, eating apples, eating fruit, whatever it is, over time you want them to slowly be able to wean away from their social support for that behavior, whatever it is. So like, if you're using this for the good of a person, it would usually be like, for me, if somebody is an alcoholic and they're hanging out with alcoholics, I would slowly have them change their behaviors. You don't want to you can do it cold turkey, but it doesn't work very well usually. The person ends up going back. So in these games, that's why I was saying like the reinforcement schedule. This is kind of an evil use of it, but that's what you want to do. You want them to have time where they're more and more okay spending their whole, the 2 hours when they get home, the 3 hours when they get home, then more like their whole evening, and then or a whole evening, then a whole weekend, and then all weekends and evenings they're gonna engage in the behavior like playing a game. So I know it's sad, but you can use this on the flip side too to increase good behaviors like running or eating, eating good food and stuff. And then over time, as you engage in these behaviors, you're more likely to encounter people who are supportive of those behaviors, and etc. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too weird, but that's what's going on in these work games, and that's what's so funny about them is because they work well, and a lot of successful games, not a lot, a couple successful games use some of these principles. But we don't know why we like them. We think we like them because it's a fun game and whatever that means, right? I just had fun, right? Or these are some elements I found fun. And then, but why? Well, because it does this. But why? Why is that fun and not fun? Well,
right.
I don't know. And this is the answer to that question. But it's funny because this strips all that away. It's like, nope, you would do this anyway, even if the game wasn't like, the fifth one in a series you liked and that kind of thing. Yeah, stripping away the mysticalness of like why people engage in certain behaviors is one of my hobbies. It makes me fun dinner guest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is fun because a lot of people they can't vocalize why they're enjoying a game, and you just gotta strip away all the shiny bits and say, well, this is what's happening.
Yeah, and this stuff, this can sufficiently explain, if you take this one paradigm at a certain level of analysis, you can explain any behavior, and that's what applied behavior analysis do, or analysts, sorry. And like I was trained in that, fortunately, but not to the extent that some of these folks are. But I think it's fascinating. You don't need like all these like fancy constructs of like endowed progress and all that nonsense that social psychology a lot of time uses. You can just explain it through these principles that we know that people engage in, like even like I said, down to earthworms.
Right.
So the undeniable laws of behavior.
They are very down to earth worms.
Snap, son.
So yeah.
I hope that wasn't incredibly boring. Was that incredibly boring?
I got what I wanted. I asked why I play these games, and now I know.
And I deserved it.
I asked for this.
Well, and I think that's just my opinion. Is the only difference between regular games and these games is that the regular games we think we have a reason why we play them, and these games we don't. We look at them and we're like,
you just step back and say, why am I playing this?
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas like a fun game, you step back after engaging in the gaming behavior for a long time, and you make up a different excuse. You're like, I really like Thief or whatever, instead of like the real truth, which is like, there's these certain schedules. Let me look here. Oh, here they are. And I can graph it on a piece of paper and predict your behavior if I could make you do, like I said, counting pennies is one of them, or putting them in a jar. I could graph and predict on paper what rate you're going to do these, and we'll be just about perfect. So like it doesn't take all this mystical nonsense of like adding on like, oh, it's a floral set or a color scheme or whatever
Right.
crap. But anyway, I think it's really cool. And what's cool is it gives you some power over your environment and people around you. As long as you're upfront, I think you should be ethical about it. You know, don't say like,
Don't use your powers for evil.
yeah, you could say something like, I really like it when you do this, babe, to your wife or whatever, and then say like so what I figured is I'll thank you, more often, which is true, and then you just do it fixed ratio.
So
Or variable.
have you ever caught yourself lost in one of these games that just shouldn't be fun, but you're playing it too much anyway?
Oh yeah, I just like XCOM. I just did. But work games, yeah.
Yeah.
Harvest Moon owned my life. Were we like? I can't remember. Were we living together when I played that game?
No, I don't think so.
Oh man, yeah, that game stole my life. The N64 one, guys. If you want to get one, that's the best one.
Yeah,
Harvest Moon 64.
that one claimed many an hour of my childhood as well.
They're just and Sims really. I guess I played that for a while.
Yeah, like Sims 4 comes out tomorrow, I think.
Oh
Or
really?
Tuesday. Yeah, I think tomorrow or Tuesday, Sims 4 comes out. So pretty timely discussion because again, a lot of people just kind of lose themselves in these Sims game because you just get involved in this just the most boring of chores like cleaning up your macaroni after you eat it and fixing the shower when it breaks and going to work. There's like entire 8 hours out of every Sims day where your character's not even there. He's just gone. He's at work, and you're
Oh,
still playing it.
okay. I'm about to. This part. I don't know if it's gonna blow your mind. This blew my mind. I'm about to give you a lot of power over your life real quick. Watch this. Why? Watch this. Like that sounds incredibly arrogant, but no, it's cool. This is science. I'm not being like, oh, I'm special. I'm not. Okay. Why do you do those things in Sims and not in real life? Like work out your character for like 3 hours or something.
Because in The Sims, I can just, for minimal effort, clicking a button, I can see very quick results. Strength goes up +1 after about an hour or 3 hours. Whereas in real life, for maximum effort, getting up, going to the gym, getting on a treadmill, or doing whatever I'm doing, I see basically no change in myself for weeks and weeks.
Ah, okay. And what if though, in your Sims character, what if you leveled at about the same rate that you would in real life? Do you think you'd still do it?
No.
No? Okay.
No, if it took 3 weeks to make the strength go up from 4 to 5, I'd probably lose interest before that.
Yeah, well, yeah. So there's something going on there as well, but that's the fact that like you'll visually look better and you'll feel better, where you don't do that in the game. Like you don't. There's no personal growth from that, right? No personal reinforcement like external reinforcers. Because in the game you just see a stat go up, but in real life you'd feel better and you'd feel stronger and like people you probably get compliments and things like that, right? You have a lot of
Right.
social support for it. So in real life you would though like do those things. Like let's say you could work out for free and you didn't actually have to go to the gym and you could just like take a pill and as long as you took it for however many weeks, 7 weeks, whatever, to make your strength score go up 1, would you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Why don't you do it in real life then? What's the difference? You said minimal effort and then what?
A minimal effort and very quick visual like progress. Like I can see, like even if it doesn't go from 3 to 4, but if it goes from 3 to 3.1, like a little number will pop up and I'll see that little graph expanding. I'm like, yeah, it's getting better.
So what about real life? Like if you can kind of just notice that you're like, oh look, I got a little curvature to my bicep now or whatever. If you just had to take a pill, but it still took the same amount of time to get that, would you do it?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the thing, right? It's one is just more aversive, right? Like working
Yeah.
out, getting up is kind of aversive, right? Going to the gym is kind of aversive.
Right. Taking a pill is less aversive than all the work that goes into working out.
Exactly. Well, the cool thing is there's this one thing that's pointed at that. This is why mindfulness is a behavioral tradition and not some cognitive tradition, right? Like cognitive people do a lot of different things and try a lot of different things because they think thinking matters, and it kind of does to some extent, but usually you can change things just through straight behaviorism, and then thinking kind of changes as well. So like, here's what's cool. Mindfulness, the ability to mindfully do something, and it takes away or minimizes the aversion. So like running, for example, mindfulness running, some people do, or mindfulness is super helpful in chronic pain. It makes it pain is subjective. There's a portion in our brain that like, oh, we've already talked about that one. pain, your level of pain is just a discomfort or a kind of, it's on the same principle of like if someone shows you a disgusting image or something, it's aversive to us. You have that approach or avoidant behavior. Well, the mindfulness like minimizes that and sometimes completely gets rid of it. So if you could mindfully engage in those behaviors every day and you didn't have the aversiveness and all you had was the decreased time for the rest of your day, that would be the only condition in which you'd be aversive, right? So like anytime you're going to engage in something that's aversive, if you practice mindfulness, then you can just flip a switch and go, oh yeah, I don't want this to be aversive, but I still want to do it, and then I click it, and then I get to do whatever the fuck I want to do. So that's why we say mindfulness is so important. It's totally cool.
So
Now,
mindfulness is that's just changing the way you perceive something?
yeah, with mindfulness, the way it works is, we have people practice it a few different ways, but essentially it's directing it's willful. I can't remember how the neuroscience folks call it, but it's the same thing that we call it. I don't know why I say neuroscience folks, but it's like willful attentional control. And so what you can do is it's really hard for us, and it takes a lot of practice because we're basically all ADD as people. Because like, let's say you're doing something, all of a sudden someone says like, David, fire, or something. Like we can't help but to attend to it, quote unquote. Can't help. But with mindfulness, you can. You have complete control of your attention. And whenever you're attending on something else, it's like whenever people say, look at my eyes when you're having a baby, look at my eyes, look at my eyes, breathe, breathe. Breathing does nothing. Like physically, it just takes your mind off the pain. Because if you attend to the pain, the subjective discomfort goes up. And so that's what mindfulness does as well. Is you can read. This is all working like on a neural level too. Like this isn't some hokey shit. This really is awesome. Neuroscientists are excited about this shit because we can just say, no, I don't want to experience aversion right now, and so we don't. It's awesome. So like that's why mindfulness is so important for like directing your life however you want to. You get your goal, which is called committed action in ACT. It's like you identify things that are valuable to you, and then despite the fact that they're aversive, you flip off the aversiveness and you just go do them. It's pretty sweet. No, no, nothing.
No, I just think if you're gonna go anywhere else with that. So what I'm hearing is there's this really sweet way of changing the way you think that makes your life awesome, but how practically do we do that?
Well, you have to practice it, so it takes a while, right? So the first one, first few times, we just have people do things like we do awareness for one, like bodily awareness, just a body scan. It's all it is slow focusing, slow holding of your attention, and it keeps slipping, right? It's like spinning a top. It's gonna fall. All you do is you attempt over time to get that top to go longer, and then pretty soon you can let it go for like a really long time. You're like, oh man, that was awesome. But the weird part is just by checking and looking at the top and saying like, oh, is it still spinning? Then that kicks you out of it. It sucks. So we have people slowly scan their body. We have them close their eyes because people can't do this with their eyes open at first at all. It's almost impossible even with your eyes closed. So we turn off all external sounds. We try to make it super quiet so that they're not, like, oh, who's that? And it pulls them out of it. And then we have them slowly scan their body, and like you can find these things probably. I'm sure there's some online. And I know I have a place where I get them online, like psychologytools.org is one of them. But there's a few guided kind of body scans and stuff. It feels hokey because people are like, is this meditation? I'm like, no, dude, this is actual science. But it's kind of like meditation. But there's a reason why this was popular.
Meditation got popular for this?
Yeah, this became popular in the medical literature before it became popular. Well, it was introduced in the medical literature before it got popular in the psychological literature. This was not something that we grabbed and we were like, oh, that sounds cool, I want to be Eastern. No, that has nothing to do with it. It was by the mindfulness-based stress reduction folks over at Yale, MBSR, yeah. And they've been presenting at conferences on this for a long time, and we picked it up from there because we go to medical stuff too a lot of times, and we were like, whoa, wait a minute, what else can it do though if it works on that level? And it's awesome. So anyway, that's what I do. Like if I start acting like a dick to my wife or something and I get all riled up, I go, like it feels like I have to say something back. I go, oh no, I don't. Click, and I just click the mindfulness thing, and then I just say, you know what? No, I love you. It's cool. I'll do it. That kind of thing. So it's given me like the most powerful like switch on my life. So anyway, that's why. But it would take all that understanding, explaining of like the reinforcement and then aversiveness and all that.
Yeah, basically, I guess the subtitle for this would be Labor Day, Labor Games. Why everybody should probably go see a evidence-based therapist, even if you don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's super helpful.
It is, man. Like, and you can reinforce yourself on these schedules. This is what's cool, just as a practical application at the end. You can set yourself up on these schedules, and then eventually you can also once you start, things become aversive, and you're like, oh well, that's going to happen anyway. There's nothing I can manipulate in my environment. So then you go, okay, well, click, and you just click the switch, and then you're fine. So yeah, it's pretty sweet, and I suggest everyone, like, I know it feels hokey at first, but yeah, practice mindfulness, and then get past that aversive feeling, and then watch what happens in your life as you start like flipping that switch like whenever you want to. It's kind of sweet. So anyway, yeah, good shit.
All right, so that's labor games. I don't really have a lot to come at it from a literature point of view, except the noble peasant trope where there's something noble about working with your hands and farming the land and doing your job without reward. And I don't know, it's a common trope in literature, but I don't know if it's there because it really is. Like, is there some kind of psychological reaction to like working with your hands and seeing things being done? Like, that might be part of it, or is it just a useful thing to perpetuate? If you're the ruling class, you want the peasants to feel like what they're doing matters.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for both sides, really. I don't know of any research about like seeing things done with your hands, but I do know that, or don't know. Anecdotally, I know that I feel better whenever I see something that's sitting on the shelf that I did. Like, oh man, I fixed this molding on the bottom of the floor. And every time I walk by that, I'm like, huh, I did that. It's nice.
And it goes back super old. Like, even one of the earliest literary influences on our culture is the Bible, right? And like the very beginning, the Adam and Eve stories, by the sweat of your brow you shall earn your bread. Like, it's kind of this part punishment, part destiny for our species, at least in this reference, that we have to work because we have to work.
Dude, actually, yeah, that work worship, the worship that people do in our culture is freaking weird, dude. That is not like
it is.
Male rhesus macaques, which are they're very similar to us as far as like their behaviors go, or somewhat. People use them a lot in animal experimentation. The males spend it's just over 90% of their time playing or recreating, and then 10% of their time is doing tasks that they need to do. But they're very play oriented, and when you look at men, we're kind of that way too. And the women played too, but it was something like 40%. I don't remember the percentage, but I'm gonna say it was around, it was somewhere in the ballpark of like 40. It was under 50
for the monkeys.
For the monkeys, yeah, the women did. And so then you look at that in our thing, and I'm not sure, like maybe that translates. I have no like empirical reason to believe that, but that's just
we have a weird fetishization of work in our society, in our culture, and that like. Where was I reading this? Maybe it was a Cracked article, but we're in a place right now, technological wise. Like, if you look at like science fiction, like Star Trek, work is no longer a necessary thing. They can replicate everything they need, right? That's kind of the goal of technology, is to minimize the amount of time we have to spend working and to maximize the amount of time we don't have to work. That's why the cotton gin was invented. That's why the combustion engine was invented. That's why robots are invented. Like, every invention is kind of designed to maximize recreation and minimize work.
Right.
The dishwasher, the washing machine. So the inevitable goal of technology and of our civilization is to create a society where we don't have to work anymore, or at least that seems to be where it's going, right?
Yeah.
And yet we still have this kind of post-depression era, like, work is good for your character, work builds strong bones and healthy teeth and keeps you in school, and if you don't work, you're a lazy piece of garbage. So what we've created is this society where we actually have jobs that exist only because they need to exist to keep people having jobs. Yeah. Like barista at Starbucks. That could be done by a machine very easily, but we still have that job because people need jobs. But we still don't have enough jobs for everybody. Like, there's still an unemployment rate, and part of that is not just economic, it's technological. Part of the reason we have an unemployment rate is because we just don't need as much work to make our society function as once we did.
Yeah, definitely.
And yet we still haven't shifted away from that 1940s, 1950s mentality of we've created a society where not everybody can work. Like, literally, it's impossible for everybody to work in our society, nor does everyone need to work, yet the people who aren't working are still considered less than or worse than us.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that, like, our welfare system exists almost, like, not almost. There's a large part of it that is just like almost shame-based, where it's like, shouldn't everybody, like, the day you come out of the womb, apply for that? You're like, oh, I don't want to work ever. That'd be sweet. You know? and we look down on them and we kind of shame people that
Right. We do
the
the
ability to
talk
work
about
but they don't
mandatory
do.
drug tests for welfare recipients and just lots of shame-based incentives.
Yeah, which it makes sense from a societal point of view, but it's fascinating from like a biological point of view because it's like, well, we're not supposed to be working much. We're supposed to have a lot of time recreating. It's really good for us to recreate, and nonetheless, like we kind of a lot of times we guilt ourselves and shit all over ourselves while we're out there playing. We're like, oh, I should be inside doing this or whatever.
Right, and
Um,
especially with like new graduates, like people who graduated like this year, like they're coming into a job market that just isn't welcoming of them, and then they're ending up having to like move back in with their parents, and they're getting shamed
Ugh.
from their parents every day, like, oh, you should be out there. Why aren't you getting a job? Have you been calling people? Have you called them back? Like all these things that worked in the '70s but don't work
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And like really,
Circle them in the want ads, right?
yeah, circling the want ads. Make sure you call them right as soon as you turn in your application. It's like, well, they said not to contact them. No, do it. That way you stick out. Yeah, you stick out as someone who's not following directions. But like it's this whole like, and then they get mad because they don't have jobs, and it's like that's kind of how our society is right now. And instead of shaming these people, maybe we should rejoice that we're actually in a place technologically where we don't need all of us to be in the mines every day.
Yeah, right.
And
Labor, man. What the heck?
like I've got a job and you've got a job, but like we're kind of lucky to have them, and
Right.
some people just can't. And instead of shaming them, maybe we should look at our society and say, well, you know what? Isn't that kind of the goal? Like, not everybody should have to work. Like, isn't that kind of what we're building towards? Like, eventually, we should be at a place where nobody has to work. And then what happens to that Puritan work ethic, that sweat of your brow, Genesis injunction by God to get a job? Like, I think a lot of that just comes from a time where that was a necessary part of society, but we need to be able to let it go when it stops being necessary.
Yeah, and people say it's not healthy, but I'm like, look at professional recreators, like professional athletes, basically, like professional runners, professional basketball players. They're loving life because activity is really good for your body, both psychologically, so phenomenologically, and also biologically. It's very good, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're subjectively happier, and you're objectively more healthier, right? And they're loving life. Like that is the best. If I could be a professional basketball player, I would
Right? Isn't that
because
the goal? Is like to do something you love?
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, oh, then every day at work is play. And then I'm like, yeah, but okay. So the point is we know it's better, but then we pretend like it's not. And I'm like, no, if I could play all day, man, I'd be like mountain biking probably. I hike, run. I would do everything I want to do.
Right. It's
Yeah,
important to have hobbies to like. I don't think it's healthy to just be sitting on the couch all day and like not doing anything, but
no,
it's important to have hobbies that can replace work, but it's still important to have like I don't know. It's weird how we both condemn people who can't get jobs and then create worlds where we don't need all those jobs.
no. My best days, whenever in summers occasionally I'll take one of these days off, and I really shouldn't do them anymore in graduate school, and occasionally I do, is what I'll do is I'll get up and I'll like play a game or watch a TV show or something like that for a little bit as I wake up and eat breakfast, and then I kind of like lounge into my like workout clothes, and then I work out or run, and then afterwards I feel great, and then I go do a couple things like that I need to do, like some errands or like some schoolwork, and then at night I eat breakfast, and then I hang out with the family for a while, and then when they go to sleep I hang out with my wife, and then I might play another game, and then I'm done. That's the perfect day, but that includes no work. Like, and so,
Yeah.
so I'm obviously happier on those days, and I'm more healthy because I don't work out or run every day during school days because I don't have time. So it's actively worse for us to work, and it increases stress levels. So which
Yeah.
is cortisol's the slow killer.
Right. Yeah. Like my parents are from that generation of like the work ethic. The work ethic. It's a moral decision to work.
Mm-hmm.
And and my dad is very stressed. Like he's got high cortisol levels. He's had heart attacks. Like he's working himself to death. Like we say that in English, right? We say you work yourself to death, and
Yeah.
yet we still glamorize it as the ethical thing, the work ethic, the moral decision. But really, we should look at work as a necessary evil if we're going to use moral language, because
Right.
it's something we have to do sometimes, but it's not good for you. And I wonder, like, we've got these taboos that we've inherited from our Puritan ancestors. A lot of this goes back to Puritans. Like if you go to Europe, they do not have the same view of work that we have in America. They have like in France, they say we work so we can live, and in America, they live to work. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Like they put in 35-hour work weeks on average over there, and they have way more holidays. So it's a cultural thing. I think a lot of it comes from our not our founding fathers, but before them, our Puritan kind of colonizers. And we've inherited a lot of taboos from them. We've inherited this work ethic. We've inherited the idea of sex as a taboo in society. Our fear of aberrant behaviors, like non-standard sexual behaviors, kind of
Right.
comes from that. And I think we're slowly seeing that kind of fade. Like people are becoming more sexually open. They're sex ed is being taught more, and homosexual marriage is becoming more accepted by our generation. But I think that the last thing to go is going to be this sancretization, this sacrosanct idea of work as a holy activity, as something that's good for you.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna persist long after we get over our sexual taboos.
Yeah, probably. We have a whole holiday tomorrow based on this idea that working, is a big part of our culture.
It's a sacred duty.
Yeah. And if you don't want to work, by the way, you join the military. Jesus. I'm serious. Ask anybody who's been like in the real military. You don't work as much because there's 4-day weekends all the time. Like President's Day, oh, that's a 4-day weekend. Like like Labor Day, 4-day weekend. July 4th, 6-day weekend sometimes, depending on the unit. Just they're everywhere. There's not a month goes by where you don't get 1 to 2 4-day weekends. So it's amazing.
Right, or teach. You get your summers off, and then people are like, "Well, what are you doing this summer? You getting a summer job?" No, I'm not. Why not? I don't need the money. Yeah, but don't you want to be productive? Yeah, I do. I want to be productive. I want to learn Japanese. I want to draw. I want to get caught up on my Netflix queue. I do not want to work at a video rental store.
Yeah, and also I cannot work and live. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Why would I not want to do that?
yeah. If I could do this all year round, I would.
Yeah, this is
So
sweet.
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how we really idolize the concept of like drudgery as a uplifting thing.
No, yeah, it's true. Whenever I was coming home from Iraq, you get this like disability thing where they look at everything that went wrong with you in Iraq, and then they say like, all right, so do you want to try to get money for this, basically?
Mm.
And one of the options is you can try to go 100%, which is like you're purely disabled. And one of the guys asked me that, and I was like, no, I would never do that. I want to work. And I still prescribe to that work ethic. Although I think that the problem is I would still do that, but that's only because the money you make for disability is very small. When people shame those people, I'm like, dude, they don't make much money. They make like below poverty level. So don't worry, they're not like getting fat off the system. They're well, literally maybe, but not like in the sense of
Yeah,
like stuff
they're
in your
not living
pockets.
large.
Yeah, they're not leaving anything for their kids. I mean, they are just subsisting, just barely. And yeah, so for me, I was like, no, I plan to be rich, so no thanks. But not that I would have considered even if I was been poor. It's just that. But part of that is because of the shaming thing. Is that I'd be like, oh well, I don't want to be the guy who doesn't work.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I got a little jacked up there. I beat the shit on my back. It pops up like twice a year. It sucks. But oh well, whatever. Anyway, that's off topic. Yeah. So Labor Day, man. I think
Yeah.
we encompassed it.
Yeah. We labor games, labor in society, and why these games are addictive in the first place.
Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else you want to say before we move on to the feedback section?
Just my condolences for anyone graduating this year. I'm sorry the job market is what it is. And
Yeah.
don't let your parents give you a crap about it, because that's the society we have built.
Oh, last thing for me. Did you know the U.S. I just looked at PolitiFact because Obama said something about number one. We're the number one quickest recovering nation right now in the global depression that we had,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, no way. So I looked up PolitiFact. It turns out we're the second. Yeah, so he was almost right. We're the
Who's the
second
number one?
fastest recovering. That's awesome. So I
Who beat
mean, we
us?
fell far, but we're still we made it back to the top again before most people. So it's nice. Anyway, yeah. So that's just I was just giving you guys hope. So it's not gonna be horrible forever. We're going back. We're back up on top.
We're on the
And
upswing. But
yeah,
still don't get a PhD unless you are getting something that pays well for it.
a professional. Yeah, same
Yeah,
sort of thing.
don't get an academic PhD. Get a professional one if you're gonna do it.
Yeah, they have a lot of cool things they do. Like they don't have to work all every day, and they can come in at like 10 if they want to. That kind of thing. But man, do you pay for it? Or well, you don't
You
get
do
paid for
not
it.
get paid for it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, so cool. Let's meet you guys on the other side of the feedback section. All right, this is the feedback section. I said feedback session when we came in here because an assessment we have to do feedback sessions all the time. It's just funny. So sorry, that's not what this is. I'm not going to tell you about your IQ scores.
Yes, but they're all very high if you're listening. So
Yeah, there is a correlation between just wanting to learn random things and being intelligent.
yeah, I can say without too much conjecture that everyone's on the north end of 100 that's listening right now.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't really care for abstract concepts, and that's most of what we talk about.
So we did get some feedback actually on our YouTube channel. Apparently, people listen to that sometimes when we're talking.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we had some nice things from Stacy. She said that it's one of her favorite podcasts, and she always learns something really amazing every episode. She says, "Continue on with the psychology rambling, never stop." So she must have loved this episode. We had a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And she said that she likes this podcast because we talk psychology and other perceived real-world social structures and how to mix them with gaming topics, and she learns a lot every episode. So thank you, Stacy. We do try to keep it relevant and find a way. Like, we are interested in more than just gaming, right? And it's no secret that this show is about more than just gaming, but we do want to kind of be able to tie it back because we are the Game Theory podcast, and a lot of people are tuning in for that.
Yeah, and there's a certain level of like trusting we do on some of the episodes that like, okay, well, you guys can tie this to games as well, like, definitely do. But I mean, the principles we're talking about are so like far-reaching that yeah, it's gonna. A lot of times we have to abstract to the point of like barely even mentioning video games, but
Mhm.
it is both inspired by and it is relevant to video games, and that's why we do it. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're talking about like learning theory, for example, on this one, or you were talking about work ethic, it's gonna get abstracted. You can't just be like, you're in a video game where you worked a lot. Well, that's because of this. And then the video game, remember when you did this in the game? Well, that's why I'm saying this sentence.
Right.
So
We need to get inspired by gaming topics, and then we just kind of wander off into other things because that's just how our minds work. We make connections really quickly, and then we move on to them.
yeah, but hopefully it's interesting. I mean, this is how our conversations used to go, and then people were like, you guys should do a podcast on this because it's pretty cool. And we thought that'll never go anywhere. And here we are. Haters.
Here we are, a year later, still doing it.
Still doing it.
So, yeah, no new emails this week. So if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to drop us a line at thegametheorypodcast, all one word, at gmail.com.
Yes, there was a lot of Facebook activity, though. That is kind of the go-to place to hang out with each other and with us. I didn't even put a lot on there, but yeah, a lot was put on there by other people, and yeah, so yeah, join that. That's facebook.com/groups plural / is it the Game Theory Podcast or Game
Just
Theory?
Game Theory Podcast.
Okay, Game Theory Podcast. And just ask to be a member. We'll click and say yeah, and come join in on the talk and the fun. Post stuff that you find relevant, that you find exciting. If you want us to talk about something, like have an upcoming idea for an episode, yeah, definitely put that on there. We're always open to that. Because we find interesting, but we want to say stuff that you find interesting as well.
And a lot of news stories that we don't cover end up showing up in there as well. So if you like the news section, and we actually had somebody talk about another show called Game Theorists, and
I didn't see that
this guy's a YouTube channel called Game Theorist or something, but it's kind of fun. He's got like good production values. He talks about Chrono Trigger retelling the Bible, and he points out like lots of names like Balthazar and Melchior and Gaspar were biblical names, although they weren't actually in the Bible. But he shows a lot of like biblical things happening in Chrono Trigger, and we kind of attribute that in the discussion, we kind of attribute that more to translation choices. We were talking about localization last week.
Mm-hmm.
So really a lot of that is probably just them trying to make it seem more Western mythos and less Japanese. And
Right.
It might not have been the original intention of the game.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion on like upcoming games, stuff like that. People give recommendations, ask questions. It's super fun. I love it every time I see something popped up there. So yeah, come join us. It's a lot of fun. Also, there's a Twitter. Haven't posted anything on there in a couple weeks. I've been pretty busy overall. Haven't even been able to. I was supposed to GM one of these games and I haven't been able to do that. So yeah, I post on there when I can. It's twitter.com/GameTheoryPod. Yeah, follow us over there. It's a lot of fun. We're getting bigger and bigger, man. Love this. Love that more people are listening in and participating. Participating is the fun part. Listening, maybe that's fun too. But
Right.
I like it when everybody talks and stuff. Yeah, it's great.
So you've got several ways to get a hold of us. And lastly, if you just want to, if you're just sitting around and you're saying, man, I haven't done anything altruistic all day, I feel like I should do something completely for the benefit of somebody else. Well, you can, and it's easy by going to iTunes and leaving us a 5-star review.
Yes, that would be awesome. We don't require money. I mean, if you want to give some money, sure, but we don't require donations, or some people doing that Patreon thing. Like we don't.
Yeah, it's big with the podcast these days is Patreon.
Yeah, we're not that, but we do love iTunes reviews. They're super important for getting us visible, getting us out there. We're doing the best we can, showing up on other people's podcasts, and but it's really based on your word of mouth and then the iTunes review. So we appreciate it, man. And girls, not man. Speaking of man and girls,
next episode.
This is going to be huge.
All right, this is something it's been in the works for a long time. We've wanted to get a panel of feminists on board to discuss it with us, but we'll see how that goes. But we wanted to do something interesting in that we're going to take a more scientific approach to the state of the industry of gaming.
Yeah. Honestly, this one, maybe, David, we haven't talked about this, but we might even skip like the intro news type section, the game experiences, just to talk, because it's going to be long. And
Right.
We're going to be doing like feminism, but fairly. Like obviously, David and I have stated that we both believe that there's obviously a case to be made by feminism, and we're all on board. But sometimes both sides get a little too excited about it and don't.
Yeah, you get the MRA side and the feminists, and a lot of what's being said is more emotional than data-based.
Yeah, so we wanted to do our best as like two people who we can. I trust David. He's not passionate about this. He plays girl characters, games with girl characters in it all the time. I don't, but that's always because I make a me clone. It looks just like me every time because I'm imagining myself doing it. But me and my wife talk about this all the time. I've been very empowering to her. I think she's like getting into this whole badass thing now. She's like, yeah, I want to be a badass.
You allowed her to be a feminist the other day. You said it was all right. So.
Yeah, I totally told her it was all right. No, I encouraged her because she came from a background where that was women are supposed to be pretty and to be the property of men kind of thing.
Right.
I'm overstating that a little bit, but you get the idea. Is she's had a lot of like.
She was raised with an idea of what a wife's responsibilities are and how they are supplemental but not equal to their husbands.
Yeah, and that women are the
the crown upon their husband's head.
Equal but different, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, so I know I can trust myself. I know I'm very dispassionate about it. I don't care one way or the other, and I know that I have some training in this, and so do you, David. That's a benefit of being an academic.
Right. Yeah. So we have criticized Anita Sarkeesian more than once for cherry picking data and not providing an end goal or a winning condition for what she's after.
While at the same time acknowledging that what she's doing is important. So
right.
Hopefully we've been fair on that.
And so this is us putting our money where our mouth is and kind of showing what we think would be helpful feminism.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are one of our female listeners, hopefully you're looking forward to this episode. If you're one of our male listeners, hopefully you are as well, unless you're a misogynist jerk. Just get up and go away and whatever else other people do when they scream at people on the internet. So good.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna look at the industry. We're gonna look at the games that are selling, the games that are critically acclaimed, the games that are popular, and we're gonna see we're just taking a snapshot and see what it looks like right now. Like, do we have a ways to go? Are things improving? What does it look like? I'm excited for this because we haven't really looked at it closely. It could go either way.
Yeah. But we did a little practice run of talking about a few games, and I think it was really cool. It was a great discussion. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Yeah. Can't wait.
So tune in next week for that, and if you want to, this would be a great episode for feedback. If you have some strong opinions on this, let us know, because we don't want it to just be our voices adding to this discussion.
I know, we have tried laboriously for 1 year to get a couple feminists to come on and talk about this, but good Lord, is it ever impossible to... I'm having a very difficult time finding academic feminists, and whenever I find people who are in academics and feminists, they've been very spiteful at the fact that there could be another side. And I was like, well, no, it's not that there's another side. It's just that, do you want to have a voice? And then we would ask you questions, and then we might say something like, oh, well, what do you think about, this? And so it's very emotionally charged, I should put it that way. So
right.
Trying to get some dispassionate people that are scientific in their approach.
Right. So this is your chance. If you really want your voice heard on this, we might even have some guest star co-hosts. Just let us know. Email us. Get in contact with us. We don't want to be... there is something intrinsically wrong with two men discussing, the plight of women in the
Mhm.
industry. So we'd be more than happy enough to like let other voices show up. Just join us in. But with or without you, we're going forward. We've put this off long enough.
Yeah, and we have been unsuccessful. So yes, if you listen to other podcasts and you know of maybe someone who is of the female persuasion, not female persuasion, but is a female and that she wants to, and that should be supportive of this task, that would be good. Because we know plenty of females, but they may not be feminists per se. So
Right,
unfortunately,
and this isn't going to be a debate that we're not going to be doing like men's rights versus feminism and who has it worse. This is purely we're looking clinically at each game and trying to find out is this what we'd want in a perfect world of gender equality or is there room for improvement? And then looking at the industry as a whole after we do that.
yeah, and this should not be as rare as it is. Go try to find this crap. We just a sterile analysis or a look without any of the emotionally charged citations like of either way, and just look at it and say like, but seriously though, academically, is there not is there a problem? There is, but what does it look like right now?
Yeah.
And how bad is it? And
Which way
or
is it trending? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What are we looking at? What are we dealing with? Like we can talk, we can bring up anecdotal like this happened and this happened, but look, can we just get some data together and look at the gaming industry?
yeah. So this I'm really excited about. Can't wait to talk about this. Can't wait to get your feedback, your thoughts. Let us know. But until then, we will sign off. And thank you for listening to another episode of the Game Theory Podcast. This has been episode 53. We talked about Labor Day, labor stuff, and some behavioral junk.
Right.
So,
So
if,
until next week, I am still David,
and I am still Jeremiah for now.
and we will see you next time.